The royal class is a special class in the temple, which is a school that helps train top talent in the empire. This class is filled with very gifted students, the best 1% in the whole empire. The main character is shocked and confused that he got into this high-level class. He's actually a 30-year-old web novelist who, because of his past life sins, ended up reborn as the 17-year-old son of the Demon King. Now he has to survive at this academy until the end. Strangely, this world is based on a novel he wrote with a doomed ending. Somehow, he now has to live past that ending and survive. The Demon World War is a long, fierce battle between demons and humans, meant to decide their fate. The war finally ends when the hero, Artorias, defeats the Demon King, Valier, bringing peace. But after such a hard, drawn-out conflict, the Empire needs to put great effort into training future talent. This leads to the creation of a special academy for the best students across the Empire, known as Temple. In Temple's royal class, a class filled only with highly talented geniuses, there is a boy named Ludwig. He is fair-minded but hot-tempered, yet he always ranks last. All of this story is actually written by the main character, a web novelist. After he uploads it online, he gets so many hate comments that he suffers a heart attack and dies from high blood pressure. To his surprise, a Grim Reaper soon appears and gives him a strange, shocking choice to make. The Grim Reaper explains to him that when someone dies, they must atone for their major sins before entering heaven. For him, these sins are quitting multiple serialized stories and writing plots with terrible continuity. Normally, this wouldn't be such a big deal, but he did it so many times that it became a serious issue that can't be ignored. To atone, he must pick one of his completed novels, where he will be randomly reborn as one of its characters, and he has to survive until the end of the story. Realizing he has no choice, he goes through his list of completed novels and finds that all of them end far from happily. As he checks each one, he can already picture himself dying quickly in every single story. Then he comes across one of his novels titled The Demon King is Dead, a slice-of-life academy story set in a fantasy world. Compared to his other stories, it seems less dangerous, making it his best option, even though this was the very story that led to his death in the first place. Still, he figures he has a better chance of surviving here. Since he'll be reborn as a random character, he hopes he won't be the main character. He'd be happy as long as he's just one of the academy students. He tells the Grim Reaper his choice, and suddenly, he's transported into the story. As he glances around the classic-looking room, he realizes he's already inside his novel, and notices that he now has horns on his head. Suddenly, a status window appears, showing his information, and he realizes that the name Valier Jr. sounds oddly familiar. He also notices that he is labeled as the lowest-grade Demon King. Piecing it together, he remembers the novel's title, The Demon King is Dead, and realizes with shock that he is actually the Demon King in this story. Before he can process it all, a massive attack hits the royal castle with a powerful explosion, sending him flying across the room from the shockwave. Then, a quest window pops up, informing him that, with the Demon Realm army's defeat close, his mission is to escape the Demon King's castle alive. Since he's currently powerless, he has to flee to survive, and he'll earn achievement points if he makes it out safely. He can't believe what he's seeing, surrounded by the corpses of fallen demons. The reality sinks in. He has truly entered the novel he chose, just as he wanted. But instead of being a regular academy student, he's stuck in the heart of the crumbling demon realm, reborn as a character who never even appeared in the original story. He is now the prince of a collapsing demon realm on the brink of extinction. As he sprints through the castle with all his strength, he can't help but think the Grim Reaper tricked him. She'd made him believe this transmigration might actually be a reward, but now it feels more like a punishment. He wonders why he had to become the son of the Demon King, a character doomed to die from the story's very beginning. The reason the castle is exploding is because the Demon King and the hero are locked in their final battle. In the novel, both of them die here, and the war ends with a human victory. Realizing his grim situation as Prince Valier Jr., he knows that if he's caught, he'll be killed without hesitation. He glances at his status window still hovering beside him and checks his stats, which are far from impressive, especially considering he has no combat abilities at all. With no other options, he decides to try the castle's warehouse, hoping to find something useful. But as he steps inside, he sees it's mostly filled with junk. Just as he's about to lose hope, a magic scroll book catches his eye. He quickly opens it and finds a teleportation spell. Desperately, he tries to activate it, only to find it doesn't work. The spell is blocked by a movement magic barrier around the castle. Frustrated and feeling doomed, he considers whether begging for his life might work, though he knows it's hardly a realistic option. He flips through the magic scroll book again and finds a camouflage spell. Desperate, he decides to try it, transforming himself to look like a human prisoner, hoping it will be enough to fool anyone he encounters. His escape plan is to blend in as a prisoner, infiltrate the human group, and wait for the Imperial army to rescue him along with the other prisoners. He believes this is his best shot at getting out alive. However, as he reaches the area where the humans are held, he's horrified to find that they have been brutally killed. Shocked, he realizes that this gruesome scene was never in the novel he wrote, which was supposed to be a lighthearted, rom-com style story. Soon, Valir notices a blonde-haired girl sitting in the corner, crying softly. Feeling a bit awkward but knowing he needs to keep up his prisoner disguise, he approaches her. Trying to stay in character, he asks if she would like to come along and escape the castle with him. She looks up at him and, to his surprise, doesn't immediately reject him. Instead, she tells him to come sit next to her. A little confused, Valir does as she asks, feeling strange in the process. To ease the tension, he pulls out a biscuit from his pocket and offers it to her, asking if she would like to share it with him. The girl hesitates for a moment before nodding and taking a bite. As they sit there together in silence, the sounds of footsteps approach. The door to the prison opens, and guards enter, followed by a nobleman. Valir looks up, expecting trouble, but to his shock, the men bow deeply in front of the blonde girl. "Your Imperial Highness," they say, their voices filled with respect. Valir's heart skips a beat. The girl he had been talking to, this prisoner, is actually a princess. Her name is Charlotte de Gardias, the first princess of the Gardias Empire. At that very moment, a notification pops up on his status window. "Mission cleared," it says, followed by a reward, 100 achievement points. At the Imperial Army base, a group of armored knights stands assembled in front of the tents. Valir remains close to the Imperial princess, having been rescued alongside her by a noble lord. He tries to stay calm, but he's filled with worry. He's a demon in disguise, using a basic camouflage spell. If the princess's mage decides to cast a dispel spell to check for any curses placed by the Demon King, his identity will be exposed. He can't slip away either. Too many people are watching over him, ensuring his safety. What worries him even more is that the princess, Charlotte de Gardias, never appeared in the original story. He never wrote her as a character. Nearby, a knight named Sir Lance approaches, bowing politely as he informs the princess that they've managed only a modest meal. She assures him that it's enough, and he adds that they'll escort her back to the Imperial Palace as soon as Duke Solarian arrives. The princess expresses her gratitude to Valir for his actions back in the cell, leaving him slightly puzzled. He recalls doing very little, yet her appreciation seems heartfelt. She inquires about his origins, intending to arrange a safe journey back to his homeland. This unexpected question puts Valir on edge, and he scrambles to think of a plausible answer. As he searches his mind, it feels as though the names of familiar regions have slipped away, leaving him momentarily blank. He notices Sir Lance's sharp gaze fixed on him, a subtle impatience in his eyes. Feeling the pressure, Valir decides to feign memory loss. To his surprise, the princess readily believes him, her expression shifting to one of empathy, imagining the hardships he must have endured. With a gentle resolve, Princess Charlotte assures him of her commitment to help him until his memory returns. Valir responds with polite thanks. Sir Lance tries to caution the princess, hinting that she shouldn't promise Valir anything, but Valir knows her promise may be meaningless in the end. He realizes that, even if she wants to help him, she likely won't live long enough to do so. After all, he never included anything about prison cells in the Demon King's castle, and now he suspects that some unseen force has automatically filled in details to flesh out this world and make it feel logical. If the princess is indeed part of this mysterious backstory, Valir fears that her life is already in danger. He created Virtus, the Imperial Prince, to be ruthless and ambitious, a character who would do anything to secure the throne. Knowing how Virtus operates, Valir is almost certain that the prince won't allow his sister to survive. She's simply an obstacle to his rise. Valir feels an urge to warn the princess about the dangers surrounding her. He hopes that by winning her trust, she might stand by him when something unexpected occurs. Just then, Princess Charlotte asks Sir Lance to fetch the doctor, saying she feels a bit unwell, likely from eating too much. Sir Lance hesitates, voicing his concerns about leaving her alone, worried for her safety. She brushes off his concerns, insisting that with the Demon King dead, there's no danger. Reluctantly, Sir Lance leaves to find the doctor. As soon as they're alone, Valir notices a shift in the princess's demeanor. Her expression turns serious, more intense than before, and she addresses him in a tone he's never heard from her. She unexpectedly apologizes, her words formal and direct, and then, to his shock, she tells him that he will die because of her. Valir is stunned, struggling to process her words and the drastic change in her behavior, feeling as though the princess before him is someone completely different. The princess continues, explaining that if things remain as they are, her half-brother, Virtus, will likely have her killed soon. She suspects that many of the soldiers here are loyal to him, and their confining her to this camp likely means they don't want anyone outside knowing she survived her time in the Demon King's castle. Valier recalls that when they were rescued, they were both covered in thick, long robes, which would have made it difficult for others to identify them as survivors. The princess adds that the soldiers are probably awaiting orders on how to handle her, likely planning to kill her, and later claim she perished in the Demon King's castle. She warns Valier that he is at risk as well. If they kill her to erase any evidence of her survival, they will also eliminate him as a witness to her rescue, ensuring no one can contradict their story. Valier considers the possibility of seeking help from the knights, but the princess quickly dismisses the idea. She tells him it's no use. She doesn't believe there's anyone among them she can trust. Still, she reassures him, promising to stay by his side until his memory returns, determined to help him escape as well. She outlines a bold plan. They will find a way to escape the camp. Her tone is steady, but urgent, as she explains that she'll create a distraction, buying him just enough time to make his move. There isn't much time, and she warns him that if he fails, it could cost them both their lives. Valier steps cautiously into a tent, his eyes darting around to ensure he isn't seen. Anxiety tugs at him as he wonders why the princess has given him such a challenging task so abruptly. Earlier, he'd asked Princess Charlotte if she truly intended for them to sneak out, to which she replied affirmatively, saying there was only one way to escape alive. She explained that they would need to bring Sir Williams Francis with them. Although Valier recognizes the name, he keeps his expression neutral, pretending not to know who the knight is. Charlotte then clarified that Sir Williams was the one who rescued them from the Demon King's castle. As one of the rare neutral figures, he is fiercely loyal to the imperial family, rather than to any one faction. Valier understands now why she wants to bring Sir Williams. His loyalty to the crown means he could be trusted to help them without betraying their whereabouts to Virtus's men. Valier voices his concern, questioning whether Sir Williams Francis can truly be trusted. He points out the possibility that Sir Williams might secretly be aligned with the prince. Princess Charlotte counters his doubt, reasoning that if Sir Williams were loyal to the prince, he would have killed them back at the Demon King's castle rather than saving them. This action, she explains, confirms his loyalty to the imperial family rather than to any one faction. Valier finds her logic convincing and agrees to follow her plan. Princess Charlotte, visibly relieved by his agreement, picks up a dining knife, intending to use herself as a decoy to create a diversion. Alarmed, Valier insists they can't put her at such risk, arguing that it's too dangerous for her to draw attention. She calmly replies that she should be safe for now, at least until they receive explicit orders to deal with her. Princess Charlotte tells Valier to hurry because they don't have much time. Valier knows he can't back out now and has no choice but to go along with her plan. She walks out of the tent and asks the guards if she can look around the barracks. The guards seem nervous and try to stop her, but she insists that she is the imperial princess and has the right to inspect the base. She starts asking them questions to keep them busy while Valier sneaks out of the tent. Once outside, Valier feels confused. He doesn't know where to begin looking for Sir Williams Francis. The camp is big, and he has no idea where the knight might be. He looks around, hoping to spot someone who can help him find Sir Williams, but time is running out, and he knows he has to act fast. As Valier stands there trying to figure out his next move, a knight spots him and asks what he needs. Valier answers that he is looking for Sir Williams Francis. The knight looks at him and replies that Sir Williams has already left for the Demon King's castle, asking why Valier is looking for him. Valier is taken aback by this news, surprised to hear that Sir Williams is not around. The knight then explains that Sir Lance, the knight who had been with Princess Charlotte earlier, had requested Sir Williams to go help eliminate the remaining forces at the Demon King's castle. Valier is stunned. He knows Sir Lance is closely aligned with the princess, and he wonders if Sir Lance had anticipated something like this happening, even though he wasn't told about the princess's plan. The knight, noticing Valier's confusion, asks him why he wanted to speak with Sir Williams. He offers to help pass along a message if it's not something too confidential. Valier quickly tells the knight that it's an emergency and Sir Williams is in danger. The knight immediately reacts, saying they need to go and save him. But then, the knight stops and looks at Valier, clearly confused, asking what he means by that. Valier, realizing he needs to be honest, decides to tell the knight the truth. He admits that he doesn't know all the details, but someone is trying to harm both the princess and Sir Williams, and that's why they need to bring Sir Williams back right away. Valier hesitates, acknowledging that he's a stranger, and the knight might not trust him. To his surprise, the knight looks at him with a serious expression and says that even though he doesn't know who Valier is, he trusts him. Valier is not convinced and asks the knight why he is acting this way, since there seems to be no reason for it. The knight replies that there actually is a reason. He says that Valier sounds so desperate that he almost seems foolish. The knight also mentions that he has a feeling this situation might happen. He explains that Sir Williams expects something like this and has ordered the knight to be ready, as someone might come looking for him. Valliere is shocked by what he hears and starts to wonder if Sir Williams knows about the hardships the princess might face. But then, he thinks to himself, if Sir Williams knows all of this, why does he leave the princess behind and go to the Demon King's castle? He should stay by her side. Dyrus then asks Valliere if they are ready to go, and he also asks if Valliere has ever ridden a horse before. Valliere immediately replies that he has never ridden one. With that, they both walk over to Dyrus's horse. Dyrus introduces himself to Valliere, saying his name is Dyrus. At the same time, Sir Lance is watching them from behind a tent. Dyrus and Valliere are seen riding the horse together. As they ride, Valliere notices some demons that are captured. He asks Dyrus about them, and Dyrus explains that they are prisoners. He says that this means the demons have been captured, and they could either be remnants of the enemy forces or non-combatants who weren't fighting. Dyrus goes on to say that they are still searching for more demons around the castle. The captured demons will likely be taken to headquarters and executed soon after. Valliere realizes that he might have ended up like those demons as well, captured and imprisoned. Soon, they arrive at the checkpoint, where they meet some knights. Sir Dyrus salutes them and introduces himself. He then explains that Valliere has an urgent message for Sir Williams. The knight looks surprised when he hears this, and replies that he just received a report. The report says that Sir Williams was killed by remnant demon forces during a reconnaissance mission. Valliere is shocked by what he hears. He wonders if Sir Williams is really dead, killed in action as the report says. The knight, his face filled with sorrow, curses the demons as he expresses his grief over Sir Williams's death. Valliere, standing nearby, realizes that with Sir Williams gone, there is no one left to help Princess Charlotte. This realization weighs heavily on him. The knight then asks Valliere if there is anything he needs to know about the message. Sir Dyrus, who had been quiet up until now, immediately replies that the message was supposed to be relayed personally to Sir Williams. With that, they are given permission to head back. As they walk, Valliere is deeply troubled. He feels a sense of unease. Remembering how everything seemed to be going too well earlier, something doesn't sit right with him. He wonders if it's true that Sir Williams was killed by remnants of the demon forces, but he can't believe it. He knows that Virtus, the Imperial Prince, wants Princess Charlotte dead. If she truly escaped from the Demon King's castle, Virtus would do everything to cover up that fact. He would make sure to eliminate all witnesses. And since Sir Williams was one of those witnesses, it becomes clear to Valliere that Sir Williams must have been lured into the Demon King's castle so that he could be killed, making it all part of a larger, more sinister plan. Valliere, feeling the weight of the situation, continues to wonder what he should do next. He doesn't want to give up yet, but the odds seem overwhelming. Sir Dyrus, sensing Valliere's hesitation, finally tells him it's time to be honest. He urges Valliere to explain why Sir Williams is in danger and how Princess Charlotte is involved. Valliere hesitates, unsure whether he can trust Sir Dyrus. Charlotte had warned him that most of the Imperial forces are loyal to Virtus, and he's uncertain if Sir Dyrus might be one of them, even if he's a higher-ranking knight. Valliere doesn't know if Dyrus has connections with the low-ranking officers who could be loyal to Virtus. But with no one else to turn to, Valliere decides to tell Dyrus everything. He explains the truth, that Sir Williams is likely dead because of a betrayal from their own knights, not demons, and that the princess is in grave danger. Dyrus listens carefully and, after hearing everything, confirms his understanding of the situation. He acknowledges the possibility that Sir Williams was killed by their own men. Then, to Valliere's surprise, Dyrus states that he will support the princess. He explains that he belongs to William's company and feels a strong obligation to help. Valliere, though still uncertain about trusting him completely, agrees. He figures Dyrus could still be useful, especially if he can help with the escape. In this dangerous situation, Valliere knows they need all the help they can get, even if he can't fully trust the knight yet. As Dyrus suggests that they should head back, Valliere stops him, his mind racing with an idea. He tells Dyrus to wait, proposing they head to the demon supply storage to loot anything that could help them escape. Dyrus, though uncertain, follows his lead as Valliere insists that, despite the storage being mostly ransacked, there might still be something useful if they look hard enough. They make their way to the storage, and Valliere's instincts guide them to a few hidden items that could prove valuable. After some searching, Valliere finds a scroll for mass teleportation, along with several other scrolls bundled together in a book. He knows these will be crucial for their escape, so they gather them up. Valliere feels a sense of relief, knowing that this could be their ticket out of the camp. However, as they prepare to leave the storage, Sir Dyrus notices something strange. He's puzzled by how Valliere knew exactly where to find the scrolls, especially considering that Valliere had claimed to be a prisoner. Dyrus doesn't ask, but a small suspicion starts to form in his mind. Before they can leave, the sound of approaching knights causes them both to freeze. The knights are searching for them, clearly looking for any sign of their whereabouts. Dyrus and Valliere quickly hide. It turns out that the knights who are searching for Valliere and Dyrus are from Duke Solarian's house. Valier feels worried because this is becoming a big problem. House Solarian is Virtus's maternal family, and it is one of the most powerful families in the Empire. Their goal is to make Virtus the next emperor. The power and influence of House Solarian are much bigger than most noble families, so their knights are not ordinary knights. Valier starts to think that these knights could be the same ones who killed Sir William. As the knights continue searching for them, one of them shows a strange ability. This knight has a supernatural eye that can sense where Valier and Dyrus are hiding. Knowing they have no choice, Valier and Dyrus reveal themselves to the knights. When the knights see them, they prepare to fight. The knights draw their swords, ready to kill Valier and Dyrus because they are supporting the princess. Dyrus quickly pulls out his own sword and stands in front of Valier. He tells Valier to stay behind him because he is ready to face the knights and protect them both. Valier can't help but think about everything he did to escape from the castle, only to end up here, about to die. It feels like all of his efforts were for nothing, but then, something catches his eye. He notices a statue with red, glowing eyes. His mind quickly remembers that it's a gargoyle statue. He recalls seeing them in cartoons or video games, knowing that they're supposed to start moving in situations like this. Before he can think any further, a loud sound echoes through the area. The gargoyle statue begins to move. The knights are shocked, and so is Valier. The gargoyle smashes through the air and strikes the captain with one powerful blow, crushing him instantly. Everyone is stunned, not expecting such a violent attack. Valier, too, is taken aback, though he had just been thinking that gargoyles usually come to life in these kinds of situations. Seeing the chaos, Dyrus quickly grabs Valier and pulls him away, using the confusion to escape. This is their chance, and they're not going to waste it. Dyrus and Valier are riding swiftly on horseback, the sound of hooves echoing as they hurry through the night. Valier reflects on the events that have just unfolded. When the status window appeared, he noticed a skill called Control Demon, and he wonders if it's because he is the Demon King's son that he possesses such a skill. It suddenly hits him that he must have unintentionally activated the gargoyle with this Control Demon ability. However, there's no time to dwell on it now. In the distance, Valier notices a group of knights pursuing them, determined to prevent them from reaching the woods. He scans their surroundings, searching for a way to escape. His eyes land on the scroll book he carries, and an idea sparks in his mind. Flipping through the pages, he finds the haste spell and quickly casts it. The horse surges forward with newfound speed, and Valier and Dyrus soon create a wide gap between themselves and the knights chasing them. Just as they begin to feel a moment of relief, a bolt from a crossbow suddenly shoots toward them. Valier realizes he needs a stronger solution to deal with the knights from House Solarian. He quickly considers a better way to handle the situation, but before he can put a plan into motion, he recalls that these knights are highly trained to resist magic. He knows that relying on spells won't be enough to shake them off. Given this, he understands that he'll need to think quickly and carefully if they are to escape safely. Valier focuses on the scroll book, aware that the knights are closing in. He calmly reassures Dyrus, telling him that he is not casting magic on the knights themselves. Instead, a purple glow begins to emanate from the scroll. Valier casts an illusion spell on the horse, manipulating its appearance to make it look like it's galloping faster, while the knights, resistant to magic, remain unaware of the trick. One of the knights' horses stumbles and falls, throwing off its rider, confirming that the spell worked. Encouraged by the success, Valier quickly follows up with charm spells, targeting the remaining knights' horses. The charm affects several of them, and their riders lose control, making them falter and fall behind. Now only 2 knights remain in pursuit, but Valier and Dyrus are not out of danger. The horse they are riding is exhausted, its pace slowing with each step. The knights are getting closer. As panic begins to set in, Valier's eyes catch a group of demon prisoners being transported nearby. A strange sensation rises within him, one that reminds him of the moment when he unconsciously awakened the gargoyle statue. Then, a sudden red glow appears in the eyes of a large orc from the group of prisoners. Without warning, the orc charges forward, pouncing on the knights who are closing in. The orc's powerful form crashes into the knights, obstructing their path and creating chaos among their ranks. Valier, stunned by the unexpected turn of events, realizes that this is their chance to escape. He urgently urges Dyrus to ride faster, knowing that this opportunity may not last long. Dyrus can't help but feel a strange sense of unease. Every time they are in a dangerous situation, it seems like demons intervene to help them. It's too much of a coincidence to happen twice, but he knows now isn't the time to question it. Their priority is getting the princess to safety. They finally arrive at the princess's tent, but the guards prevent them from entering. Dyrus, quick on his feet, decides to take a more direct approach. He swiftly neutralizes the guard, clearing the way, but the noise attracts attention. Realizing they've been discovered, Dyrus urges Valier to go ahead with the mission while he stays behind to hold off the knights. Valier enters the tent and is met by 2 mages who are standing with the princess. The mages immediately express their anger at the intrusion, having clearly been given strict orders to prevent anyone from entering, their eyes narrow, clearly hostile. Without missing a beat, Valier tells the princess to close her eyes. He quickly casts a flash spell, blinding the mages temporarily. With their vision impaired, Valier seizes the opportunity. He rushes to the princess, taking her by the hand. Knowing they don't have much time, he activates the mass teleportation spell and now has no choice but to use it. He specifies the destination, Gradium, the capital of the empire. A light blue hue shines on the spot with a huge magic circle as the base. The next moment, the system notifies that Valier has cleared the prologue sequence, unlocking a special achievement known as the Turning Point in History. A character like Princess Charlotte, who should no longer exist at this point, has actually survived, and the future has been greatly altered. Valier also receives 1,000 achievement points. In the main story of this novel, the Demon King is dead. The setting takes place in Gradium, a city that is based on Seoul, the place where Valier lives. Valier and Charlotte manage to teleport to Gradium. When they arrive, Valier is completely surprised. The city looks nothing like what he expected, and he is shocked by how detailed everything is. It's much more real and vivid than he imagined. Meanwhile, Charlotte feels confused because the environment has suddenly changed. She quickly realizes that they are now in the middle of the capital city. Valier explains what happened to her. He tells her that Sir Williams is dead, and it was Dyrus who helped them escape. Just then, Dyrus appears as he emerges from the teleportation channel, confirming Valier's explanation. Valier feels relieved that the plan went as expected. Dyrus successfully escapes with the teleportation scroll, just like they had hoped. Afterward, Dyrus properly introduces himself to Princess Charlotte. He then begins to explain everything that happened, including how they managed to infiltrate the Demon King's castle, gather some scrolls, and how they were saved by an unexpected intervention from the demons. As Dyrus continues, Princess Charlotte grows suspicious. The story seems odd, and she can't help but glance at Valier, who also feels that something doesn't add up. After walking through the market square for a bit, Valier suddenly slips away from the crowd. He finds a quiet spot to sit and begins to think about his situation. He feels frustrated by his inability to buy food or anything else, wishing he had known more about the world. He even thinks to himself that he could have added a setting to the game system, like demons can live off mana alone, if he had anticipated this. To his surprise, a notification appears in his system window. It tells him that he can indeed add this setting to the game system, but it would require 100,000 achievement points to do so. The notification also mentions that he can make changes to the plot of the story, giving him some control over the world around him. Along with this, a list of active challenges appears, each one nearly impossible for him to complete at the moment. However, these challenges offer a way for him to earn achievement points. However, Valier is not allowed to undermine the plot of the story. Any attempts to do so will result in penalties, deducting achievement points from him. This rule makes him cautious about how he interacts with the world around him. Curious, Valier checks the list of active challenges and spots one titled Scribe's Advice, which requires 150 achievement points. He decides to take it and, after following the advice, he learns that he should visit a magic item shop. Thinking that he might need to sell the scrolls he has found in order to survive, Valier heads to the nearest shop. When he arrives, he tries to sell the scrolls, but to his surprise, the shopkeeper immediately chases him away. It feels as though the shopkeeper believes he is trying to scam them with fake scrolls. Valier finds this behavior odd and wonders why the scrolls are being treated with such suspicion. Not discouraged, he moves on to another shop. This time he shows the scroll to the shopkeeper, who seems intrigued. The shop owner asks him if he can try tracing another scroll, commenting that Valier draws pretty well. If he can do that, they could split the profits from selling the scrolls in half. The shop owner then adds that if Valier can finish tracing the scroll by the next day, he will be paid 5 silver coins. Valier agrees, although he can't help but wonder why nobody seems to recognize the scrolls he looted from the Demon King's castle. Feeling suspicious, he decides to try one more shop. If they still don't recognize the scrolls, he'll just sell the fireball scroll and call it a day. He heads to another shop, and when he enters, he finds the place to be messy and empty. However, as he looks around, a red-haired lady walks in behind him and asks if he is a customer. Valier responds that he wants to sell some scrolls. She tells him that she doesn't buy scrolls, but she can't just let him leave with them either. Instead, she offers to pay him 2 gold coins, but when she sees the scrolls, her expression changes. She becomes serious, and her eyes lock onto him. With a more intense gaze, she asks Valier to be honest with her. She wants to know where he got those scrolls because she recognizes them as magic constructs that are only used by demons. Her voice grows more stern as she presses him again, demanding to know how he acquired those scrolls. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Valier feels a chill run down his spine. He knows he's in trouble now. Even though Valier understood that magic exists in this world, he never took the time to learn how it works, or the differences between types of magic. He didn't know if a spell was human magic or demon magic. As he stood there, he realized that this must be the reason why the merchants had dismissed his scrolls as fake. They either weren't mages themselves or simply didn't know enough about magic to recognize them. However, the red-haired lady was different. She seemed to see through him immediately, her serious demeanor telling him she knew exactly what the scrolls were. She pressed him for the truth, demanding to know how he had gotten them. In a moment of panic, Valir tried to use his status window to make her forget the whole thing. But he quickly realized that he needed 3,000 achievement points to do so, a number he didn't have. With no other choice, he reluctantly decided to tell her the truth. He explained that he had obtained the scrolls from the Demon King's castle, fully aware that this admission would have serious consequences. The lady, however, doesn't believe him right away. Valir then explains that he had obtained the scrolls when he tried to save the princess back in the Demon King's castle. After hearing this, the lady seems to soften a little, appearing slightly convinced by his story. Her demeanor shifts, and to Valir's surprise, she even gives him a hug. While the gesture might have been meant to comfort him, Valir feels uncomfortable, especially since he's still hungry, and she won't let him leave just yet. She then suggests that someone might have placed a curse on him while he was in the Demon King's castle, offering to help lift it. Valir tries to stop her, not wanting any more complications, but before he can protest further, she has already cast a dispel spell on him. The magic works instantly, and Valir is forced to revert back to his original demon form. Now in an even more awkward situation, Valir attempts to explain himself, but before he can finish, the lady suddenly drops to her knees and greets him properly. She refers to him as the Demon King's son, which shocks him. He's taken aback by her recognition, and as he looks at her closely, he realizes she is a vampire, her fangs clearly visible. Yet, despite this, he doesn't remember ever meeting her before. She asks him if he remembers her, but Valir is still trying to process everything that's happening. Alaris, realizing that they needed to avoid attracting attention, suggests they move quickly and heads upstairs to her room. Valir follows, still processing everything that's happened so far. Once inside, she offers him food, which he gratefully accepts, his hunger finally being addressed. As he eats, Alaris observes him carefully and learns that he only remembers his identity, but nothing else about his past. She introduces herself properly as Alaris the Flames, a member of the Gradium Infiltration Squad. Valir doesn't recall encountering any characters like that in his novel, but he doesn't question it. Instead, his curiosity takes over, and he asks her why she, a vampire, lives in a sunny house frequently visited by humans. Alaris explains, somewhat matter-of-factly, that she had no choice. Living in a house with a storefront was the only way she could afford the rent. She then continues to explain more about the other members of the Gradium Infiltration Squad. One of them is Sarkagar, a dread fiend who uses the false name of Count Argon Pontius. The other is a lycanthrope known as the Hound of Irene, who operates from a base in the Bronze Gate area near the Irene River. Alaris explains that it was Sarkagar, the dread fiend, who had kidnapped the human princess. His ability to shift faces and transform made him exceptionally skilled at blending into human society, allowing him to carry out such tasks unnoticed. As for the Hound of Irene, Alaris explains that he is the leader of one of the most notorious gangs in Gradium. The gang is quite large and influential, providing substantial financial support for the infiltration squad, helping to cover all their operational expenses. Despite all this, Alaris expresses relief and gratitude that Valir is safe. She believes that with him, they can rebuild the demon realm. However, Valir quickly cuts in, making it clear that he has no interest in rebuilding the demon realm. He argues that such an effort would only lead to another war between realms, and the last war was terrible enough. He doesn't want to go through that again. Additionally, he points out that gathering demons together in the current situation could very well get them all killed. Alaris tries to explain to Valir that, as the prince, it is expected of him to want to rebuild the demon realm. However, Valir firmly refuses, telling her that he doesn't want to be the king of a kingdom that no longer exists. He also reminds her that she too is no longer bound to serve a non-existent kingdom. Her expression darkens as she absorbs his words, and after a quiet moment, she walks away, clearly depressed. Before leaving, she tells him to get some rest. Later that night, Valir, still curious, asks Alaris what he used to be like before all of this. Alaris, nervous and hesitant, tells him that he was once an inspiring role model to all demons. Her tone is uneasy, and Valir senses that his past self wasn't as kind or heroic as he might have hoped. He doesn't dwell on it, choosing instead to focus on the present. He adds that tomorrow they will need to meet the rest of the infiltration squad to which they shared the bed that Valir felt nice being in this character for once. The next morning, Alaris and Valir step out onto the streets, heading toward the meeting place for the rest of the Gradium infiltration squad. The capital, still basking in the aftermath of the battle, is alive with celebration. People are shouting and cheering in the streets, marking the safe return of the princess, The war has finally come to an end, and the people of the city are taking to the streets in joy, thankful that the long conflict is over. As they pass through the jubilant crowd, Valir and Alaris make their way toward the Mana train, which is stationed in the Aligar district. The Mana train, something Valir had originally included in his novel for convenience, offers them a comfortable ride. Valir and Alaris arrive at the area beneath the Bronze Gate Bridge, a place Valir recognizes from his novel as a spot where beggars often gather. But Alaris doesn't seem surprised by the condition of the place. She knows that this is where they are meeting the leader of the beggars. Alaris calmly tells Valir that they will be passing through a sewer pipe nearby to reach their destination. As they make their way through the area, Valir begins to feel uneasy, sensing something odd about the place. Just then, a woman steps out from the shadows, and she immediately calls out to Alaris, as though she's been expecting her. Valir is startled by the woman's appearance. Her sharp gaze and confident posture give her a commanding presence, making Valir instinctively uneasy. However, the woman greets Valir as well, and after a brief moment, she introduces herself as Loyar, a member of the Gradium Infiltration Squad. Since Alaris already knows her, there's a sense of familiarity between the two. Valir is shocked that the leader of this place is a lady. He didn't expect someone so powerful to be a woman in such a rough, neglected area. The lady asks Alaris about Sarkagar, and Alaris responds that he isn't there yet. She guesses he's likely busy with his noble duties, but assures her that he will be there soon. However, Alaris decides to share something with the lady, Loyar. She tells her that Valir doesn't remember anything except who he was. Loyar looks at Valir, stunned by this revelation, and asks him for confirmation. Valir nods, agreeing that he has no recollection of anything beyond his identity. Loyar reacts with a mix of relief and surprise. She is happy about this memory loss, as she knows how Valir used to treat her poorly in the past. She hopes that, without his memories, he won't be able to mistreat her in the same way. Valir doesn't realize that his past behavior was so harsh, and he sincerely apologizes to Loyar, hoping they can start working things out from this point forward. He extends his hand for a handshake, and Loyar hesitantly takes it, but to her surprise, Valir playfully tickles her instead. Loyar gets angry and demands to know why he would do that, but Valir doesn't expect her reaction to be so intense. He quickly apologizes. Before they can move on, a loud noise interrupts them. Suddenly Sarkagar appears, too clumsy in his excitement. He rushes over and hugs Valir so tightly that Valir struggles to breathe. Sarkagar continues holding him, begging Valir for something, but Valir, gasping for air, asks him to let go. When Sarkagar doesn't, Valir calls Alaris over for help. Alaris explains that Sarkagar is the one who served the Demon King with unwavering loyalty, to the point that he would sacrifice his own soul if it meant rebuilding the demon realm. Later, with Loyar's help, who had to pull Sarkagar's hair, they all gather around the light they make to keep warm while they discuss. Sarkagar insists that Valir must go and rebuild the demon realm, stating that he must avenge his father and build a greater empire there. But Loyar angrily cautions him about the words he's spouting out. Valir then assumes that even if they rebuild the demon realm, he still considers himself useless. Sarkagar, however, assures him that he is not, that he is a high and pure archdemon before whom all demons bow. Yet Valir remains unconvinced, questioning Sarkagar about what he means by archdemon. Everyone is shocked at his question at first, but then Sarkagar begins to explain. He tells Valir that an archdemon is the greatest of demons because in the Dark Land, the realm they live in, a harsh and ruthless place drenched in blood, strength, and unity are essential. However, he explains that the demons once nearly killed themselves to extinction, simply because they belonged to different races. One day, though, a powerful demon intervened, controlling the minds of others to end the fighting. He restored unity among the demons in the Dark Land, and from then on, the demons called him the Archdemon. He became known as the progenitor of the Demon Kings. At that moment, Valir finally understands what they mean. He asks about their plan, and Sarkagar replies that Valir must first become stronger, return to the demon realm to reunite the scattered demons, and gather his strength. But Valir disagrees with this plan, knowing they're at the Empire's capital, the heart of the enemy. Instead, he proposes staying there at the Bronze Gate to learn the culture and customs of their enemies, intending to uncover their weaknesses. Sarkagar eventually agrees, then proposes another idea. Valir could enroll in the temple, the Empire's academic institute. Although Valir is reluctant, Loyar sides with Sarkagar this time. Valir, however, is still against the idea, secretly hoping Alaris will rescue him. But to his dismay, Alaris also agrees. Seeing he has no other choice, Valir quickly voices his concern, arguing that it's too risky. He worries his cover could be blown, making it impossible to predict what would happen next. In response, Sarkagar produces a ring and places it on Valir's index finger, explaining that it has been passed down through generations of dreadfiends. He tells Valir that it will help him transform into any form he wishes. Sarkagar also reminds him that the glory of the Demon Empire will soon be theirs. Since they decide that Valir will study at the temple, they initially consider using one of Alaris or Sarkagar's fake identities for his enrollment. However, they quickly rule this out, knowing the humans might investigate Charlotte's captor. Lawyer then introduces her henchman, Dibon, as an alternative. Together, they create a new identity for Valir, Reinhardt. With the Dreadfiend ring to alter his appearance, Valir would enroll in the temple under this disguise. Loyar instructs Dibon to take Valir out the next day to get a new identification card. When Valir asks how they plan to cover the tuition fees, everyone falls silent, realizing they hadn't considered that detail. They begin to brainstorm. Dibon reminds Loyar that they absolutely can't cover the temple's tuition fees with their current earnings. Loyar seems to have forgotten that even if they begged on the streets, they would never afford the tuition for the temple. The temple, known as Garcia's Temple, is the most prestigious academic institution on the continent. It's where the young nobles from the most influential families come to study and socialize. The annual tuition fee is around 100 million won, a fortune they clearly can't manage. Still, Loyar is somewhat hopeful that they might scrape together the amount. Dibon then suggests that if she's serious, she could consider making it possible by reducing the amount she takes from the club funds. Valier is taken aback when he hears about a club. He thought they only sold packs of guns, so he becomes curious about their business. Loyar, however, is unwilling to reduce her take from the funds, knowing that it would put their business at risk. But Dibon insists that it's their only option. Valier then suggests a plan. He only needs the first semester's tuition fee. He explains that he could earn a scholarship as the Empire is searching for future warriors to replace those who have fallen. If he proves his potential, he might be exempted from paying any fees. He's aware that the temple waives tuition for exceptionally talented individuals, and although he might be a low-level demon king, he's still an archdemon. Confident he'll find his talent once he's there, he decides that, if needed, he can use achievement points to unlock a talent. Loyar, impressed by his confidence, agrees to the plan. Dibon, however, notes that they still don't have enough to cover even that one semester. Valier, observing this, suggests they change tactics and start reaching out to customers directly if they aren't coming to them. He proposes a new idea, seeking customers along the Mana Train route, a place with high loot traffic and a quick escape route in case things go wrong. Valier suggests they could sell toys on the train, not even high-quality ones, as parents would likely buy them just to keep their kids from screaming. Dibon immediately agrees, but Loyar becomes angry that Dibon let Valir overhear the plan. Grateful to Valir for the idea, Dibon introduces him to the other gang members, and in celebration, they start pouring drinks. Valier takes this chance to ask about the club Dibon mentioned earlier, and Dibon explains that it's their own organization. As it turns out, Loyar had formed one of the largest gangs in the capital. Their income mainly comes from begging on the streets, and somehow it covers the expenses of the infiltration squad, the magic item shop, a noble lifestyle, and the gang's living costs. Valier begins to suspect Loyar might be hiding something from him. Unaware of this suspicion, Dibon continues explaining how they got their club name, the Rotary Club. Valier quietly resolves to find out what Loyar might be concealing. But just then, Loyar appears, furious that Dibon is giving Valir alcohol. She drags Valir off to the interrogation chamber, ignoring his pleas for help. Dibon, intimidated, stands by helplessly. When they reach the interrogation chamber, Loyar warns Valir to avoid alcohol, but Valir sees this as the perfect chance to ask about her other income sources. He points out that begging on the streets alone couldn't possibly cover the temple's tuition or even the infiltration squad's expenses. Loyar is momentarily speechless, surprised by his question. Eventually, she explains that she didn't intentionally hide it from him. She just didn't think he needed to know. Valir then asks if her work involves harming others. Loyar admits that it sometimes leads to that, but it's not their main purpose. Finally, she decides to fully explain. The begging is a cover. The Rotary Club members disguise themselves as beggars to gather information for the Gradium Thieves Guild. Loyar then reveals that she didn't intend for him to be deeply involved in this line of work, and urges him to forget about the club once he's in the temple. The next day, Dibon accompanies Valir to the Gradium Administrative Office to make an identification card. The process is easier than Valir expected, thanks to Dibon bribing the staff. From there, they head to the temple's admissions office. As they pass through the gates, they see a crowd of wealthy people vying for a spot for their children at this elite school. They enter the consultation office where Valir knows talent testing takes place, as he's heard that a discovery of talent could allow him to study for free. Many others are there waiting to be tested. Finally, it's Valir and Dibon's turn. They're number 86. However, once inside, they realize they're actually in the admissions application office. Valier tells the clerk he wants to pay just for the first semester, but she refuses, explaining that students have tried borrowing money for the first semester only to drop out, so partial payments are no longer allowed. Accepting this setback, Valier turns to leave, but Debun urges the clerk to test Valier's talent, suggesting he might possess extraordinary abilities. He even offers to pay for the test, but the clerk assures them it's free and agrees to conduct it. She brings out a scanner and instructs Valier to place his hand on it. He hesitates. Gathering his nerve, he places his hand on the scanner. To everyone's surprise, the scanner malfunctions, baffling the clerk, as she insists it was working fine moments ago. She leaves to retrieve another scanner. Meanwhile, Valier is puzzled by the failure, wondering if it's a sign or something else. Dibun, however, is thrilled, assuming the malfunction means the scanner has detected some exceptional talent in Valier. Soon after, the clerk returns with a second scanner, which she's tested beforehand. She asks Valier to place his hand on it again. Once more, the results surprise her. She explains that the scanner is displaying an aptitude, essentially a lesser form of talent. Those with aptitude aren't necessarily prodigies, but they show potential to become above average in a given area over time. However, she adds that having aptitude alone isn't enough for temple admission. It's usually used just to reassure parents of their children's abilities. Valier feels a wave of disappointment at this. Then suddenly the clerk pauses, astonished, and reveals that Valier appears to have an aptitude for every skill known in the world. According to the scanner's results, Valier supposedly possesses the unique ability to wield both divine power and dark magic simultaneously, a feat unheard of in the Empire's history. Even Valier is taken aback, unable to grasp how this could be possible, especially since it wasn't exactly what he was aiming for. Meanwhile, Dibun is overjoyed, thrilled that Valier has turned out to be exceptional. They return to Loyar and relay everything. She too is stunned, but she gives Valier a congratulatory thumbs up. Valier, however, privately wonders if the circumstances are just adjusting to fit him into the novel's narrative. He understands that the novel couldn't predict what talent he might choose with his achievement points, which could be anything from close-range combat skills like swordsmanship or spear mastery to magic or archery. In fact, Valier knows it doesn't even have to be combat-related, as he can unlock any skill he wants if he has enough points. Dibun, noticing Valier's subdued reaction, finds it odd. Valier pretends to be pleased, pointing out that at least the club won't need to pay his tuition. Dibun, feeling proud, believes it's thanks to him that Valier's aptitudes were detected. He's convinced that if he hadn't insisted they stay, the lady would never have discovered this incredible result. Valier initially plans to wait until the next semester before becoming involved in the main storyline. But the way things are going, it seems inevitable that he will end up in the royal class. This prestigious class at the temple is reserved for the best and brightest students, the elite of the elite, who receive scholarships for the entire program. Students in the royal class live in a luxurious dormitory, receive ample allowances, and have the privilege of attending any lectures, even those meant for upperclassmen. These students are considered the top prodigies of the Empire, their skills and talents proven beyond a doubt. Despite this, Valier wants to spend at least one semester as a regular student, but to his surprise, he is placed in Class A, a class known for its arrogance and pride. He can't fathom how he ends up there, especially considering he has nothing to show them yet. Alaris, noticing Valier's moodiness, asks what is bothering him. Valier confides in her that he is uneasy about the inevitable clash between Class A and Ludwig, the main character of the novel. Ludwig, a transfer student, will end up fighting the arrogant students of Class A, teaching them a lesson in humility, and he doesn't want to be caught in that mess. However, Valier is thankful that, at the very least, his unlimited aptitude will likely keep expectations low for him. He hopes that the others won't expect too much from him. Alaris reassures him that everything will be fine, offering him some comfort despite his worries. Valier already imagines what life in Class A will be like for him, and he knows that he needs more than just aptitude to survive there. The class is filled with talented and arrogant students, and he doesn't want to be caught off guard. Alaris reassures him, promising that they will help him in any way they can, especially since he will have the privilege of leaving the temple whenever he wants. Despite her assurances, Valier can't shake the feeling that there is more to Alaris's eagerness to send him to the temple. He suddenly questions her, asking why she seems so eager for him to be around humans, especially when he knows Sarkagar might be right, he could grow stronger there. Alaris explains that her main reason for encouraging him to attend the temple is so he can get used to being around humans. Spending time there will help him understand their ways, which will be crucial for his future. Though Valier accepts this reasoning, he still wonders if Alaris will regret it later. Alaris then prepares some clothes for him to wear at the temple and gives him a sparkling magical necklace. Valier is surprised by the gift, and she reminds him that she specializes in flame magic. She tells him the story of the 7 vampire clans, each named after a knight, and how the clans of the sun and the moon were lost over time, including their magic. The remaining 5 clans, each representing an element, survived, and their powers have been passed down through generations. The necklace, Alaris reveals, is the heirloom of her clan, Flamma Martis, the symbol of the Flame Clan's head. Valier guesses that Elleris must be the head of the Flame Clan, and he wonders why she is giving him such a precious heirloom. Elleris explains that the necklace will allow him to cast fire spells using his mana. She asks him to try it out. Valier, confident in his abilities, tries it, but the flame he produces is weak. He questions Elleris about why the spell is so weak, and she explains that the necklace channels stronger flames when used to harm others. She primarily gave it to him for protection, although she hopes he won't need to use it at all. Valier understands then that Elleris is worried about him, yet she doesn't want him to cause harm to anyone. With this in mind, Valier makes a vow to himself. He will never use the necklace for offensive purposes until he graduates. Later, Loyar visits Valier and gives him some money for his allowance at the temple. She explains that it's the only thing she can offer since he helped her avoid paying his tuition fee. She also knows that Elleris and Sarkagar have already given him gifts, so she doesn't want to be left out. Valier thanks her, expecting her to leave so he can rest. However, she continues to advise and warn him about various things. Eventually, Valier politely sends her out of his room so he can finally have some peace. As he settles down, Valier suddenly remembers something. The novel he had written, his attempt at a slice-of-life story, was meant to be lighthearted, a break from the dark, grim endings that his readers often criticized him for. He had wanted to create something cheerful, but he quickly realized he didn't have the skill to keep a happy story going. Without enough incidents or plot twists, the story's cheerfulness started to fade, and the novel lost its initial spark. Valier tries to recall the details of how the story progressed, but his memory is fuzzy, especially toward the end. He strains his mind and finally remembers that, midway through the novel, a gate to another world opened. Monsters began pouring into their world, putting everything at risk of total annihilation. Valier feels disappointed by this turn of events. Valier is uncertain about what to do next. Should he run away, hide, and just wait for the story's ending to unfold? He considers this option briefly, but then remembers that Elleris and Loyar don't deserve to suffer because of his mistakes. With this in mind, he resolves to face the consequences head-on. Determined to make things right, he decides to go to the temple to become stronger and earn achievement points. He hopes that by doing so, he will either be able to rewrite the incident involving the gate, or at the very least, confront the monsters himself. If the world is heading toward its end, he will do whatever it takes to stop it. Valier eventually returns to the temple, where he and the other royal class students are informed to head to the dormitory by 1 p.m. He walks toward the dormitory and is immediately stunned by the size of the building. He can't help but wonder how much money must have gone into constructing it. Inside, it's even more impressive, spacious and elegant to the point that Valier doubts he'll even be able to find his room among the vastness. As he's looking around, a girl calls out to him. Turning around, Valier sees her offering a handshake, which he reciprocates. She introduces herself as Ceres Van Owen, the student president of the royal class. After looking at his student verification card, she offers to help him locate his room. She notices that his card has no last name, but addresses him by the name on the card anyway. Owen tells Valier that during the orientation program, she will explain everything he needs to know as a first-year student. She insists that he attend, and Valier thanks her before heading off to find his room. When Valier arrives at his room, he's surprised to find it locked, but he quickly recalls how to open it, remembering the details from the story. As the door creaks open, he is shocked by the immense size of the room. It feels more like a private suite than a student dormitory. He stands there, surprised, but soon notices a box placed on the ground. Curious, he opens it and finds a map of the temple, dormitory guidelines, some snacks, a book, and a pen inside. Valier, now with some free time, takes the opportunity to make a list of the characters he remembers from Class A and Class B. As he's jotting down names, he hears an announcement calling all students to gather in the central lobby. Though he wishes he had more time to recall additional names, he reluctantly puts the list aside and heads toward the lobby. On his way there, Valier looks up and notices a group of guys standing upstairs watching him. He wonders if they are upperclassmen of the royal class based on the way they're observing him, but he decides not to dwell on it. He continues on his way, eager to get to the lobby. Just as he's about to reach the entrance, a guy accidentally steps on his foot. Valier reacts angrily, but the guy immediately apologizes. Calming down, Valier listens as the guy introduces himself as Ludwig. Valier is surprised, realizing that things are starting to feel real now that he's met the main character of the novel. They walk to the central lobby together, where Owen instructs them to take their seats. Valier is unsure where to sit since he's the last numbered student in Class A. As he's about to settle in, some students from Class A notice him and start asking if he's the one with the rumored unlimited aptitude. They tease him, mocking his appearance, and wonder aloud why someone like him would be placed in Class A. Valier feels embarrassed but tries to brush it off. The introductions begin, starting with the students of Class A. The first person to introduce himself is Virtus, and Valier is taken aback. He remembers that in the novel, Virtus had hidden his identity, but here, he's openly introducing himself. Valier can't help but wonder why Virtus would act differently from what he recalled. After all the students in Class A introduce themselves, the focus shifts to Class B. When the first girl, Charlotte, stands up to introduce herself, Valier's concern deepens. He remembers that Charlotte shouldn't even be in Class B, and he begins to feel uneasy about the direction things are taking. Valier feels a growing unease as he watches Virtus and Charlotte, two members of the imperial family, stand among the royal class. Virtus, as the eldest son of the emperor, has the potential to wield tremendous power. If he graduates from the royal class with excellent grades, it will solidify his authority and influence, granting him an untouchable position in the empire. The weight of this achievement would not only come from his royal blood but from his proven skills, making him a formidable figure. Valier, however, is disturbed by Virtus's early appearance in the royal class. This is not how the plot was supposed to unfold. In his novel, Virtus was meant to stay in the background, quietly building his power before revealing himself. The fact that he has made himself known so soon changes everything. Virtus is supposed to be the hidden villain, operating in the shadows, but instead, he's stepping into the light, signaling his ambition from the very beginning. Charlotte's presence in the same class only adds to the confusion. She was never supposed to be in the royal class, let alone share it with her brother. This deviation from the plot unsettles Valier even more. He wonders if something he did, perhaps surviving alongside the princess, caused this shift. The timeline seems to have been altered in ways he can't fully grasp. Valier tries to make sense of it all. This was not the direction Valier envisioned for the character. But now, with Virtus already making his move, Valier knows things are shifting in ways he can't control. Charlotte, too, seems to be an anomaly. Her presence in the royal class is something Valier never planned, and it makes the situation even more complex. The unease that settled in him when he first saw her has only grown stronger, and now he feels like the story is no longer his to guide. Then, Owen states the rules of the temple. No discrimination will be tolerated, and all students should consider each other equal regardless of their levels. Failure to abide by these rules will attract punishment, which could include expulsion from the school. Afterward, Owen decides to read a letter from the imperial family, even though such letters are usually not allowed. She simply wants to make an exception. The letter serves as a warning to Virtus and Charlotte to be considerate of their positions, urging them not to compete harshly against each other, as doing so might deprive them of their right to the throne. When Valier hears the announcement, he hopes that it will prevent the prince and princess from fighting, at least for now. After the announcement, they are dismissed, but there's a guy among them named Erhi, who tries to acknowledge Virtus as the prince. However, Virtus refuses, mindful of the warning given in the letter. He doesn't want to make any moves that could attract unwanted attention or cause trouble for the imperial family. After discussing for a while with Erhi, Virtus leaves and heads toward a girl in Class A. She is the one who should have been in the first place, but Virtus was placed there instead. As a result, she is in second place. Virtus approaches her to apologize for taking her position, but the girl, whose name is Ellen, doesn't seem to care much about his apology. She leaves his presence without saying much. Valier, however, sees no reason why Virtus should even bother to apologize. It seems like a gesture meant to maintain his princely demeanor, but Valier finds it unnecessary. Ellen's full name is Ellen Artorius, and she is the sister of Regan Artorius, the legendary warrior who sacrificed himself to defeat the Demon King. Meanwhile, where Erhi, Virtus, and others are standing, Ludwig approaches them and introduces himself. Instead of returning the greeting, the Class A students look at him with disgust and hatred. This reaction confirms to Valier that everything is unfolding according to the novel's plot. Ludwig, the main character, has just become the target of Class A's disdain. When Ludwig sees that he is not welcomed by the Class A students, he decides to approach Valier, who he had already met earlier. Ludwig, feeling a bit isolated, asks Valier if they could be friends. Valier, without hesitation, agrees, and they shake hands, smiling at the start of what seems like an unlikely friendship. However, Harriet, the fourth student in Class A, is furious at the sight of Valier associating with Ludwig, a student from Class B. She doesn't take kindly to this and is visibly angry, but Ludwig, unaware of her disdain, tries to be friendly with her as well. To his surprise, instead of receiving a warm greeting, he gets a hot slap from Harriet. The unexpected slap leaves Ludwig stunned and speechless, his face flushed with shock. Harriet, with a look of contempt, tells Ludwig that he does not belong in the Class A dormitory, and makes it clear that she doesn't care about the rules Owen had set earlier about treating each other equally. Her words are harsh, and the atmosphere grows tense as Ludwig stands there. Just as Ludwig is processing the slap, Virtus arrives on the scene. He immediately notices that Ludwig is unable to defend himself or respond to Harriet, which gives Virtus a moment to step in. With a calm yet commanding presence, Virtus questions Harriet, asking why she would treat Ludwig in such a way. As Harriet is about to answer, she falters, her anger momentarily subsiding. Harriet didn't anticipate that her actions would backfire the way they did. Her intention was to gain favor with Virtus by humiliating Ludwig, but she soon realized that her plan had only made things worse. When Virtus questioned her behavior, she faltered, unable to provide any justification for her actions, which made her look even more foolish. Seeing how things unfolded, Virtus, with his usual calm demeanor, decided to take the initiative. He led Ludwig to a corner, away from the tension of the group, and offered an apology on behalf of Harriet. He reassured Ludwig, telling him that if he ever needed to talk or had any issues, he should feel free to use the pager. Irhi, who had witnessed the whole exchange, couldn't help but praise Virtus for his kindness and angelic behavior, recognizing that his actions were far from what the typical prince would do. Meanwhile, the first day at the temple came to an end, and Valir was in for a surprise. He was awarded 100 achievement points simply for completing the day, which shocked him. He had barely done anything, just watched Ludwig get shouted at and deal with the drama, and yet, here he was with points. He couldn't believe it, wondering how he had managed to earn so many points just for existing in the temple for a day. As he navigated the point system, he was shown a list of talents he could purchase, but he quickly realized that he didn't have enough points to afford anything worthwhile. Disheartened, Valir briefly considered that he might never be able to afford the talents he truly wanted. But then, his eyes caught something interesting: supernatural powers, which didn't require any points. Curious, Valir clicked on the category, expecting something powerful, but instead found that the supernatural powers listed seemed weak and unimpressive. They were far from what he was hoping for, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they wouldn't be useful for much. While magic powers were what he really desired, the reality was that he couldn't afford any of them with his current point total. Valir, after considering the options, decides to focus on gathering achievement points for now. The royal class students have a separate matriculation ceremony from the other temple students, but it turns out to be surprisingly simple. The head teacher introduces the homeroom teachers for each class, and then the students are given a brief tour of the lecture halls in the building next to the dormitory. It's a brief yet essential introduction to the temple's layout, giving the students a chance to familiarize themselves with where they'll be spending most of their time. When Class A gathers in their classroom, their homeroom teacher, Effenhauser, appears before them. He introduces himself in a formal manner and immediately lays down the structure for their schedule. Mondays and Thursdays are the days they attend lectures together as a class, while Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are designated as days when students can choose their own lectures, attending those that fit their individual interests or goals. As part of the class organization, Virtus, the temporary leader of Class A, is assigned the responsibility of being the point of contact for any issues or grievances that the other students might have. The teacher makes it clear that if the class ever wishes to change the leader, they can discuss it amongst themselves and inform him, giving the students a sense of autonomy and involvement in their leadership. However, it's also understood that any instructions from Effenhauser will be passed down through Virtus, reinforcing his temporary leadership role. The teacher makes one exception to the rule about the student's conduct. He must be called immediately if a fight breaks out, not Virtus. He explains the importance of preventing students from killing each other and stresses the need for everyone to stay vigilant and wary of one another. The class listens closely, the tension palpable in the air. One of the students raises a question, asking what would happen if they called for the teacher. He answers without hesitation, assuring them that he would be extra cautious about the situation. Then, with a serious expression, he adds that he holds the authority to eliminate any student on the spot if necessary. The room goes silent, and a wave of fear sweeps through the students. "I've been the homeroom teacher here for 10 years. His words carry a weight that makes everyone uncomfortable, further solidifying the gravity of the situation. With the unsettling atmosphere lingering, the teacher decides to take his leave. However, he unexpectedly calls Valir to follow him. Valir's heart skips a beat, wondering why he is being singled out. Despite his apprehension, he follows the teacher to his office, unable to refuse. Once inside, the teacher gets straight to the point. He tells Valir that, unlike his classmates, he doesn't seem to have any notable talents. The teacher asks Valir how he plans to approach this issue, or if there is any skill he would like to learn. The teacher makes it clear that the skill doesn't necessarily have to be a specialty, but he expects Valir to be proactive. Valir, unsure of how to respond, takes a moment to think. He has no clear path in mind, but soon realizes that, of all the skills available to him, learning supernatural powers might be the most efficient. It could give him the edge he needs to survive in this world. So, he tells the teacher his choice. However, Valir notices the teacher's reaction to his decision. The man seems less than pleased to hear that Valir wants to pursue supernatural powers. After a brief pause, the teacher explains why. Students without proven supernatural abilities are generally not allowed to attend lectures on the subject. The only exceptions are students from the royal class. The teacher expresses concern, warning Valir that if he cannot prove his powers, he may be chased out of the lecture room. Despite the exception, there's a risk, and the teacher doesn't want Valir to be embarrassed or left out. Later, the teacher surprises Valir by volunteering to give him a private lecture on supernatural powers. He hands Valir a timetable for the semester, explaining that no changes can be made. As they discuss the subject, the teacher makes it clear that supernatural powers are rarely gained through mere effort. Instead, they come with intrinsic abilities, and those who possess them don't need to work as hard to develop them. The teacher advises Valir to try focusing on something else, something he might have an aptitude for, instead of fixating on supernatural powers. Valir appreciates the teacher's guidance, even if it's not exactly what he wanted to hear, and leaves the office, pondering the advice. As he walks toward his next class, Valir can't help but think that the teacher seems kinder than he originally anticipated. There's a sense of understanding in the teacher's words, and while it's not the direct help he had hoped for, it's still guidance in its own way. But when Valir enters the classroom, his thoughts quickly shift. He is greeted by the stares of his classmates, all of them scrutinizing him with harsh eyes. Before he can even settle in, whispers start to fill the room, and Valir realizes that someone must have already figured out that he doesn't have any talent. The mockery begins almost immediately, and Valir can't escape the rising tension in the air. His classmates start to make cruel comments, questioning why someone without talent would be placed in the royal class. He tells Valir that he has no talent and believes Valir shouldn't have been accepted into the academy, especially not into Class A. According to him, someone without talent would belong in Class B, not Class A, which is known for its students' abilities. Valir calls him a jerk and asks, sarcastically, if that's why he was acting friendly with B10 the other day. As Valir stands up, they now face each other, close enough to feel each other's breath. Surprised, the other person asks if Valir is talking to him. Before he can reply, Valir, standing angrily, says he didn't give himself the admission and hasn't bribed anyone. He applied like all the other students. If the other person has an issue, he should take it up with the admission office, not bother him. Valir points out that he might have a lot of mana, but he lacks the ability to control it. The other person, now scared, starts to bend down, his eyes turning red. Valir finishes his sentence by telling him to stop calling him a jerk, or he will regret it. The boy quickly walks back to his seat and his friends gather around him, asking what happened. As they talk, Valir overhears the male students gossiping, saying he has no talent and a bad temper. Valir knows this is what they'll think of him now. At first, he feels upset, but then he decides to embrace the image they've given him, the talentless, nasty person. Later, in the school's eating hall, while everyone is having their meals, Kair, the guy he argued with last time, notices that Valir has been watching him. Valir, feeling bad about the argument, starts blaming himself. He realizes his bad attitude has made everyone think he's nasty, and now even his classmates are ignoring him at the table. Charlotte, a girl with mana attunement and mana operation, is talking with Harriet about how they could study together. She believes they have a lot in common. Across from her, Ludwig, who helped her get extra meat for healing, listens quietly. Valir, sitting across from them, feels a bit jealous. He notices that the guys now seem to care about her more than they do about him. When the meal ends, everyone is told they have to run 20 laps as part of their training. Valir can't believe it. He just finished eating and now he has to run. He wonders why a mage needs this kind of physical training. As he thinks about it, Ludwig walks up beside him and sarcastically says he shouldn't get tired since the laps aren't that many. Valir can't believe what he's hearing. Still feeling surprised and unable to speak, Valir watches as a lady runs past them, leading the class in the 20 laps. Ludwig immediately starts running after her, eager to compete. Valir knows that while Ludwig might not have the talent the lady has, Ludwig loves competing, especially when it comes to stamina. Meanwhile, one of their female classmates tells the instructor that she feels like she's dying and doesn't want to run anymore. Before Valir knows what's happening, the instructor appears beside him, saying that if this were a real battle, she would have died. He also reminds them that if she doesn't finish the laps, she won't pass the semester, as that's a rule from the Empire. Once the laps are done, they move on to sit-ups. Some of the students are complaining, saying the curriculum feels like military training. It's so intense that they're jealous of Charlotte, who is sick and exempt from it. The instructor counts the sit-ups, but some students are already at 50 or more, while others struggle to reach 40. Valir, who hates the training, knows that if anyone is caught slacking, they'll have to start over from the 20 laps and the sit-ups again. They're all tired, but some are excited about how it's building their muscles. After the training, in the dressing room, Valier overhears some guys talking about tomorrow's training, which surprises him. He had barely managed to finish today's workout and can't imagine how he'll get through Thursdays. Just then, Kyer, the guy he argued with about the admission, approaches him, mocking him. He says he can't believe Valier isn't stronger after what he saw him do on the field. He keeps taunting him, questioning how Valier can be so lazy with exercises and still act cocky in class. Valier replies that he's not being cocky. It's Kyer who started the trouble. Kyer suddenly yells at him, saying Valier shouldn't talk back to him, trying to assert some kind of authority as he pushes his chest forward. Valier, already tired and frustrated from the intense exercise, remains calm, trying to control his anger and behavior as all the boys in the dressing room watch. He continues buttoning up his shirt and tells Kyer to try pushing his chest again. Kyer, not wanting the others to think anything else, pushes Valier's chest again. Before Kyer knows what's happening, Valier throws a powerful punch, and everyone in the room gasps in surprise. Kyer falls flat on the floor, but before he can get up, Valier jumps on him and starts punching. The other students, seeing it getting out of control, rush in to pull Valier off of Kyer. Kyer, eager to fight back, is also held back by the boys, who tell both of them to stop fighting. Soon they find themselves in the teacher's office, sitting side by side on a sofa as the teacher sits across from them. Valier is surprised by how quickly the teacher found out about the fight. He realizes it was Louis Ankton, a tattletale who had informed the teacher. In the office, the teacher tells them they are fighting on the first day. Kyer quickly responds, blaming Valier for starting it, and claims that Valier had sworn at him in the morning in class. The teacher dismisses Kyer, telling him not to speak unless asked. Then he turns to Valier, asking if he was the one who caused the fight. Valier answers honestly, admitting that he started the fight because Kyer had tarnished the image and reputation of the temple. Kyer, shocked by this response, is left surprised. The teacher, intrigued, wants to know more. The teacher interrupts, as Kyer tries to shout that Valier is lying, but the teacher silences him, allowing Valier to continue. Valier explains that after Kyer insulted him, he moved closer, trying to overpower him, claiming Valier was lazy on the training pitch. Kyer thought it was the perfect time to beat him. Kyer, knowing his reputation is at risk, tries to interrupt again, but the teacher shuts him down, asking Valier, number 11, to explain how Kyer, number 10, has tarnished the temple's image. Valier smiles inwardly, glad the teacher is interested in what he has to say, though he keeps his happiness hidden. He knows this will only make things worse for Kyer. The teacher, addressing them by their numbers, continues. Valier explains that Kyer has been spreading negative rumors about the temple, claiming the school's admission system is biased and that it's unsuitable for their jobs. He recalls that ever since Kyer arrived, he's been vocal about how he doesn't deserve to be in the school or the class, blaming the system for letting him in. Valier adds that Kyer has even accused the temple administration of using dirty tricks to get him admitted. Valier remembers how Kyer cried, trying to make his accusations more convincing, hoping the teacher would believe him. Kyer, realizing he's already guilty in the teacher's eyes, stays silent. The teacher then asks about the fight, and Valier admits he started it, explaining that he couldn't tolerate the insults Kyer was throwing at the temple's credibility. He apologizes for losing his temper, admitting his reckless behavior. The teacher, known as Effenhauser, listens carefully. Effenhauser is a well-known patriot of the temple, famous for protecting its reputation against all forms of attack or blackmail. Effenhauser, a longtime member of the temple known for his kindness and sense of justice, tells Valier, number 11, to return to class, while Kyer, number 10, is told to stay put. The teacher seems to think that maybe Valier misinterpreted Kyer's words, and that Kyer might not have meant all the things he said. Valier leaves the office, heading back to class, and as he walks down the hallway, he notices many students peeking at him through the windows. He knows that by now the whole class, especially Class A and B, must have heard about the fight. He imagines they must think he has a bad personality with no talent. He receives a notification on his screen, informing him that his challenge has been completed, and he has earned 200 achievement points. Another challenge appears, instructing him to take first place in the upcoming fitness exam. Valier is surprised. He knows that Ludwig and Ellen have been fighting for first place in fitness training ever since it started. He thinks to himself that the only way he could win first place would be if he broke Ludwig or Ellen's legs. Another challenge appears, instructing him to be in the top 10 for the midterm exam, which would earn him 3,000 points. Just as he's finishing reading the challenges, another one pops up. This one is about getting a girl to confess to him before the semester ends. Valier dismisses it, feeling frustrated. He can't believe that even though he couldn't manage this in his previous year, he's expected to do it now. There are other smaller challenges too. Valier feels overwhelmed by the number of challenges, but before he can think too much more about them, Effenhauser enters the classroom, startling Valier and the rest of the class. Kyer follows, heading straight to his seat. Effenhauser asks if all the students are present, and when the class responds, he asks the class representative, number 1, to gather everyone's admission applications. Those who haven't filled out their forms yet should stay behind, while those who have filled them out can submit them and leave the room. Valier notices Kyer's expression and realizes that Kyer won't cause any more trouble for him. Once Valier has submitted his form and leaves the room, he hears a voice shouting at a student, telling her to watch where she's going. Without even looking, Valier recognizes the voice as Erhi's, a male student. He looks back to see that Erhi is yelling at Scarlet, the only girl in the class with red hair, a feature that symbolizes ominous things. She has fallen, and her books are scattered on the floor. Erhi continues shouting at her, saying she shouldn't come his way again. Valier, now angry at Erhi for his rude behavior, runs to Scarlet and helps her up. He manages to control his anger, reminding himself that red hair in the demon world symbolizes courage and bravery, not something to be bullied for. Scarlet, despite her reputation as a bully due to her appearance, is not someone Valier feels should be treated that way. Lying on his bed, Valier scrolls through his notification pad, still processing everything that happened at school today. He's pleased with his progress, having gained new abilities like increased strength and mind reading, but he knows there's still more to do. Each achievement requires points, and he doesn't have nearly enough for some of the powerful skills he wants. His skills are still locked, and he realizes that without unlocking certain abilities, he won't be able to take first place in the fitness exam. To unlock those skills, he'll need to put himself in dangerous situations that will trigger his hidden abilities. He looks through his pad at the various skills available, like swordsmanship, archery, and mana attunement, each costing 2,000 points. He's surprised at how expensive everything is. He knows he won't be able to afford all of them right away, so he starts to consider which skills are most important for now. As he looks through the list of challenges, he spots one that makes him hesitate, asking a girl out and getting dumped. He scoffs at it, knowing he values his dignity too much to risk the shame, especially for just 200 points. But then his eyes fall on another challenge, and a small smile crosses his face. This one requires him to get a classmate to confess to him. It's worth 1,000 points, and Valier feels more confident that he can pull this off. Meanwhile, outside in the streets of the temple, Valier knows it's not just a place of learning. The streets are full of shops and markets, where people buy and sell goods, and there are many government buildings scattered about, showing how well organized and civilized the temple is. Among them, 3 students from the temple, Connor, Kyer, and Erhi, are sitting in one of the fancier restaurants, their meal laid out before them. Despite the luxurious surroundings, Kyer is still visibly upset, his mood heavy from the altercation with Valier earlier at school. Connor tries to convince him to eat, but Kyer refuses, pushing the food aside, still lost in his thoughts. Erhi, the only noble among the trio, watches the interaction quietly, his expression detached as he leans back in his chair. Unlike the other two, he carries himself with a certain level of composure that comes from his noble upbringing. He dismisses the issue, telling Kyer that he shouldn't waste his time worrying about Valier, whom he refers to as a wacko. The tension between the three is palpable, and their bond isn't one formed out of mutual respect or admiration, but rather a shared frustration with Valier, the outsider who has already caused a stir by angering all of them with his behavior. Though the three of them don't expect to get along this quickly, their bond starts to form when they learn that Kyer was punished for the fight, despite their expectation that Valier would face the brunt of the consequences. As they continue their conversation, and Kyer is finally eating, they notice some of the school ladies also inside the same restaurant, though not in the same section. One of them mentions that he believes their class has the most beautiful girls. The other two are surprised by this, and remind him that, according to the school rules, they aren't allowed to look at the girls outside of school in an inappropriate manner. Connor then asks who they think is the most attractive among the girls. One answers that it's the princess, a noble, while the other responds that it's Lady Rihanna. They continue discussing the girls when someone suddenly approaches them. They freeze, concerned that someone might have overheard them talking about the ladies. However, they're relieved to see that it's not a teacher but a student from their school, one about their age. She calls one of them out, handing him a letter. As he reads it, the letter reveals that she has feelings for him. She asks what he thinks of her, and he admits that he feels the same way, claiming it was love at first sight. She quickly rushes off, stating she is in a hurry, but will make time to meet him again. The other two, who are still outside but can hear the conversation clearly, realize that it's a love confession. Kyer, looking at himself in the mirror, wonders why a girl would choose the other guy over him, thinking he's more handsome. However, there's a twist. The girl who confessed to Connor is actually Valier, using a transformation skill to take on a different form in order to get a love confession from him. This was part of a challenge designed to help him pass. Kyer's notification pad then updates, revealing that he is not allowed to use any form other than Valier, which is known to everyone, unless given explicit permission. He is frustrated when he sees a new message instructing him to go on a date with Connor, using the same lady form. He would earn 1,000 points for completing the task. Kyer, irritated by this, decides to choose the challenge where he must write a love letter to a classmate and get rejected. Although it will be humiliating, he knows that completing challenges will earn him points and skills. He selects Ellen Artorius, known as A2, who he is certain will reject him no matter what. His plan is to drop the letter and be rejected, collecting his points. When Kyer opens the door to his house, he hears the sound of a sword slicing through the air. Ellen is practicing with her sword, her movement so forceful that the sound of the blade cutting through the air echoes loudly, reaching the entrance. Although Ellen is using a wooden sword, she swings it with speed and precision, demonstrating how long she has been practicing. As she breathes heavily from the effort, Kyer calls her name. She stops to listen, and Kyer thinks to himself that if he confesses to her, she might use the sword to beat him. But he quickly pushes the thought aside, convincing himself that the 1,000 points for completing the challenge are worth more than anything that might happen. He tells himself it's an investment in his future. With one hand, Kyer stretches out the letter he has carefully written, avoiding eye contact with her. He hopes she will read it, as he has put all his thoughts and feelings into it. Just as he expects, once she opens and reads the letter, she simply says no. Kyer mutters to himself that it went exactly as expected, then turns and leaves her house, while she resumes her training. He can't shake the feeling of being rejected so easily. Despite receiving his challenge points, he can't believe she turned him down without a second thought. At school the next day, they are outside for fitness training, focusing on swordplay for attacking enemies. Each student is given a wooden sword and 2 instructors. Although Kyer is physically present, his mind is still preoccupied with what happened the day before. He can't stop thinking about how he was too shy and timid to even look at Ellen when she was by his side. As he tries to push these thoughts aside, the female instructor moves closer to him and points out that he seems distracted. She shouts at him, asking if he thinks they're here to play. Meanwhile, on the other side of the training ground, Ellen is impressing the male instructor with her swift and graceful swordplay. The instructor claps for her and remarks that such skill is expected from a royal class student. As Kyer is being corrected by the female instructor, he is distracted, watching the male instructor praise Ellen. The female instructor, growing frustrated, shouts at him again, annoyed that he isn't paying attention to her instructions. Meanwhile, the male instructor remarks that Ellen isn't the only royal class student who applied for the training. He calls out Valier's name, Reinhardt A11. Valier answers from nearby, surprising the female instructor. She asks him again if he's sure, and he confirms. The male instructor then suggests that Valier and Ellen, as royal class students, should spar against each other, a form of training where just the 2 of them compete. To Valier's surprise, Ellen immediately agrees. The other students form a semicircle around them, eager to watch the spar. The students are excited, but Valier, already defeated in his mind, believes she will likely take him down within seconds. He figures it will be a fight he'll never forget. The female instructor is also excited, telling them that they should do whatever they like during the spar, and she will decide when to stop them. Valier, feeling the pressure building as the students' eager faces surround him, starts to feel he can't handle it. Before he even realizes what's happening, he can't see Ellen in front of him anymore. As he turns to his left to lift his sword, Ellen smacks him on the head. He falls to the ground flat, and as he goes down, he wonders if Ellen is taking her revenge for the love letter he gave her, thinking that maybe she's angry, and this is her way of getting back at him. When Valier wakes up, he finds himself lying in a bed in the infirmary, with Ellen sitting beside him. She explains that after he fell, he lost consciousness and couldn't wake up until the training ended, so she had to take him to the hospital. She mentions that it's already the break period. As he attempts to get up from the bed, he staggers, nearly falling again. Immediately, Ellen supports him, helping him as they head out of the room. Valier tells her that she didn't have to help him, but she replies that she thought he would guard her first strike, allowing her to point the sword at his neck so that the spar could end quickly. However, she didn't realize he had no experience or training in swordsmanship. Valier senses that she's indirectly apologizing to him, and when he detects this, he quickly removes his hand from her shoulder. In an attempt to make peace between them, he suggests that they go out to eat since it's lunchtime. Ellen agrees immediately. They head to the east side of the temple, a place known for its traditional foods. After sitting down at a restaurant, they are offered the best Korean stew, a dish Valier loves. He had spotted the restaurant on his way from Ellen's house the day before. As the stew is served, he dips a spoon into it and offers a part of it to Ellen, honoring her with the gesture. However, deep down, he's thinking that this could be his small revenge because he believes she won't like the food. When she tastes it, Ellen spits it out, confirming his thoughts and saying that she doesn't like it. Valier smiles, feeling that he has achieved what he wanted, but to his surprise, she continues to eat the rest of the food that was served to her, which is also Korean. To his astonishment, she finishes the entire bowl. As they prepare to leave, Ellen tells him that she will never eat the food again, and Valir is surprised to hear this, especially after seeing her finish the whole bowl. In the royal class, during the magic theory period, the teacher writes magical equations on the board with white chalk. As the class progresses, Valir realizes that he hasn't understood a single thing the teacher has said since the class began. He knows this is just the first semester, and with the second semester approaching, he dreads how much harder it will become. Frustrated, he stands up and attempts to walk out of the class. The teacher notices him leaving and asks where he's going, but Valir doesn't answer. He continues walking out, contemplating dropping the class altogether. Next, in the mana attunement training class, Valir is also registered because it's required for his schedule. He lies down with many others in a supine position while the teacher talks to them about mana and the universe. By the time the class ends, Valir has fallen asleep. When he wakes up, he sees that nearly everyone else is also asleep, which is typical for this class. It's a class that consistently receives great satisfaction remarks from students. In the supernatural power control class, attendance is taken before the lesson starts. The teacher calls out the names of the students, and everyone answers present, except for a surprising addition. Charlotte has joined them. Among the students are Rihanna de Grands, Connor, Heinrich, and several others. Valier finds that all the classes are exhausting. In this class, the students are taught how to control their supernatural powers. Rihanna de Grands stands out, as she has the highest ability to control her power, which everyone admires. People are happy to see her powers awakening so early, though only a few know the full extent of her abilities. She and her assigned teachers always go into a separate room before the class starts. Valier wonders if Rihanna might have fabricated her abilities just to get into the prestigious temple school. Meanwhile, Heinrich, who has the power to control fire, struggles. He can only control it for short periods before losing focus. Connor, who possesses the supernatural ability to teleport, has a unique problem. After each teleportation, he finds himself naked. His challenge in the superpower control class is learning to teleport without losing his clothes in the process. While others are successfully using and training their powers, Connor is focused on mastering this aspect of his ability. Meanwhile, one of the instructors approaches Valir, who is sitting quietly. She asks him about his superpower, which still hasn't manifested. Valir responds by asking if the instructor can put him in a dangerous or fearful situation, hoping that might trigger his power. The instructor gently explains that powers don't work that way. If they did, everyone on Earth would have superpowers. She also warns him that if he continues to avoid participating in the training, he is at a high risk of failing the class. Valir acknowledges this, understanding the consequences. Later, as Valir walks down the school corridor, one of his fellow royal class students, who is also in the superpower control class, calls out to him. The student questions why Valir even bothers attending the class if he doesn't have any superpower. Valir immediately responds, stating that he joined the class in hopes of gaining a superpower. The student laughs, telling Valir that he's been deluding himself. Just because he has infinite aptitude doesn't mean he has any superpowers. Other students passing by overhear the conversation and listen in. Valir replies that he's hoping something might come to him one day, referring to the possibility of his superpower awakening. Heinrich, who is also in the class, then tells Valir that he shouldn't come to the next class unless he wants Heinrich to burn him with his fire powers. As Heinrich walks away, Valir, not backing down, responds sarcastically that Heinrich, who can't even cook potatoes, has the nerve to threaten him with fire. The students around them exclaim in surprise at Valir's comment. Heinrich, infuriated by the insult, turns around and shouts at Valir, calling him a filthy commoner and demanding to know how dare he insult a member of the royal family. As Heinrich refuses to apologize, Valir firmly tells him that according to the school rules, no student is allowed to bring their title into the school, and by doing so in front of everyone, Heinrich has broken the rules. Valir warns that he will report this to the school authorities and the student council if Heinrich doesn't apologize within 3 counts. The surrounding students eagerly wait to see what will happen next. However, Heinrich, refusing to lose his dignity, summons fire from his hand, ready to throw it at Valir. Before he can act, Valir swiftly punches him on the head, causing the fire to fizzle out. Valir justifies his actions, claiming it was self-defense from Heinrich's attempt to roast him. Heinrich, now even more enraged, tries again to summon fire, but Valir smacks him down once more, continuing the back and forth for a while. Heinrich finally attempts to get physical, but Valir knocks him down again and steps on his face with one leg, asking why Heinrich constantly bothers him when he has never done anything to provoke him. Valir then warns Heinrich, with students watching the exchange, that if he ever uses his superpower on him again, he'll make sure to beat him senseless. The students, who have been watching the confrontation, are left in stunned silence. By the time they gather in the dining hall later, word has spread quickly about what happened. Most of the students avoid making eye contact with Valir, clearly distancing themselves from him. Ludwig, a fellow student, approaches Valier at the dining table and tells him he wants to speak with him privately. As they step outside the dining hall, the cool night air surrounds them, and the moon shines brightly enough for them to see each other clearly, aided by the soft glow from the temple lights. Virtus offers Valier tea, which surprises him. He hadn't expected a simple invitation like that. Valier agrees, though he remains curious as to why Virtus would call him out just to have tea. Meanwhile, Virtus is observing Valier closely. He notices that despite Valier's casual conversation, he's not letting his guard down. This, in turn, makes Virtus reflect on the fact that Valier might be afraid of him due to his reputation among the classmates. Valier, in contrast, is wondering if Virtus, as the future swordmaster, might restrain him somehow in this meeting. However, their thoughts dissipate as Virtus finally speaks after serving the tea, and begins by explaining that he's called Valier here because people are vexed with him. Valier, confused, asks what Virtus means by that. Virtus clarifies that people are afraid of him, and he has come to speak on their behalf. He goes on to express admiration for how Valier defended the temple against Kair, who had been speaking negatively of it. Virtus explains that he's always wanted to be a patriot of the temple, and he believes that if he associates with Valier, others might follow his example. Valier is even more confused at this point. He had been expecting something more hostile, like being shouted at or reprimanded. However, Virtus continues, shifting the conversation to the recent incident with Heinrich Schwartz. Virtus tells him that what Valier did to Heinrich was seen as rude and disrespectful. Some students are beginning to think that Valier treats people poorly because he has powerful connections or a secret family backing him. There are even rumors circulating that he might be an undisclosed member of the imperial family. Virtus then directly asks Valier if he really has such connections. Valier, now understanding the direction of the conversation, answers no, and Virtus nods in response. He goes on to explain that Valier doesn't need a family name or connections to stand up for himself. He tells Valier that, as far as he sees it, Valier is doing what anyone should do, standing up for himself instead of being bullied or looked down upon by his peers. Valier can sense the weight of Virtus's words lingering as he contemplates the conversation. Virtus's disbelief about his lack of family connections catches him off guard, but it also reinforces Valier's internal understanding that he's been living in a world where his confidence is often mistaken for something more. Virtus, though surprised, seems to grasp the truth in Valier's response. The way he holds his teacup becomes an indication to Virtus that Valier isn't lying. His manners are too simple for a noble to possess. Despite Virtus's warning that revealing such things might not bode well for him outside the temple, Valier remains steadfast. He isn't looking to hide behind the veil of connections. If something happens to him, he'll ensure Heinrich bears the blame, making the royal family's name a collateral casualty. The conversation takes a turn when Valier, standing by the moonlit window, reflects on why he loves the temple so much. It's more than just a place of learning. It's where someone like him, who came from the streets, could rise up purely on talent. Virtus, with his calculating mind, seems to respect Valier's loyalty to the temple, but his philosophy is different. He speaks cryptically about the caste system of ants, where rank and position are all that matters, and as someone in a higher position, he is allowed arrogance. Valier, ever perceptive, picks up on Virtus's underlying message, that he too is a person of rank who must assert control regardless of the individuals around him. Valier, however, questions the need for such an attitude. Why does Virtus have to treat everyone below him with such disregard? Virtus counters, pointing out that Valier's eloquence and composure imply he's not from the streets, despite Valier's outward appearance. He's been pressed hard in this conversation, but Virtus warns that he will continue to dig into his past, trying to uncover who Valier truly is. In the end, Virtus leaves with a reminder to Valier to control his anger. As Valier watches him walk away, he can't help but mutter to himself that Virtus is a creepy guy. But Valier knows there's more to this interaction than just an odd conversation. Virtus has started to take an interest in him, and that could mean trouble, or perhaps an opportunity. Later, in sparring class, Valier's thoughts are interrupted by the stinging pain of a blow to his nose and head from his opponent's wooden sword. Blood spills onto the floor as Valier stumbles, trying to regain his balance. His head spins from the impact, but his mind replays Virtus's advice about controlling his anger. But Valier knows he can't lose control now, not in front of everyone, not with the instructor's eyes fixed firmly on him. His opponent grins, seeing Valier's staggered state as an opportunity to assert dominance, but Valier's resolve hardens. He won't let his anger take over. He needs to think clearly, despite the blood on the floor and the fire building in his chest. It is Valier's first weekend staying at the temple. 2 days have passed since his conversation with Virtus, and Valier has started to accept that Virtus won't do anything to stop the rumors spreading about him. He's not surprised, After all, he and Virtus aren't really friends. They're only acquaintances who can occasionally exchange a few casual words without any deeper connection. Valier has noticed something else about Virtus too. Virtus appears to be a truly kind and good-hearted person to everyone around him. He treats others with warmth and gentleness, and people seem naturally drawn to him. But Valier can't shake the feeling that Virtus is acting, putting on a performance of kindness. To Valier, it's almost as if Virtus is a genius at pretending to be benevolent, skillfully hiding his true self behind this perfect image. Meanwhile, the rumors have made Valier feel like an outcast. Almost everyone from Class B except for Ludwig is avoiding him because of these rumors. In his boredom and frustration, Valier thinks about seeking out Loyar. Later, Valier is seen inside a building with Loyar. She looks at him with concern and asks if he's all right, also wondering if the Imperial Princess and Prince are causing him any trouble. Valier assures her that nothing unusual has happened so far, and he even mentions that the Prince seems to have taken a liking to him. He adds, however, that if things ever go wrong, he will use the special ring he has to escape. Valier then tells Loyar that he has a request for Sarkager. He suspects that the princess might have some kind of hidden supernatural power, and he doesn't like that he doesn't know what it is. He feels uneasy about this mystery and wants Sarkager to investigate the matter quietly. Loyar listens and agrees to pass along his message to Sarkager. However, she also warns him to avoid meeting with Alaris or Sarkager directly. Valier raises an eyebrow and asks why, thinking it might be because seeing him with people who don't seem connected to him could raise suspicion. Loyar nods, hinting that it's best for him to avoid unnecessary risks in these uncertain circumstances. Loyar then informs Valier that he is being followed, which startles him. He quickly wonders who it might be, and it turns out to be a group of his classmates. As soon as they realize they've been spotted, they flee. Loyar decides to let them go for now, but warns Valier to be more careful when moving around on his own from now on. Valier takes her advice seriously, realizing he'll need to be more cautious in the future. He can guess why his classmates were following him. They probably wanted to see if he lives up to the rumors they've heard about him. To avoid unwanted attention, he decides to stop going to places like the Rotary Club, which might add fuel to the gossip. Later, when Valier returns to the academy, he feels the intense, judgmental stares of his classmates on him. One of them boldly claims they saw him hanging out with beggars under the bridge, sneering that he must be even lower than a commoner. Valier, not missing a beat, responds with sarcasm, playing along with their assumptions. Valier's confidence stuns his classmates. Without missing a beat, he warns them that they shouldn't dare use his background to harass him. With a cold tone, he hints that he could be much nastier than they might think, even implying he might go as far as stabbing them in their sleep if they pushed him. He tells them it's unwise to mess with someone who has nothing to lose. One of the classmates tries to act tough, though fear is clearly written all over his face. Valier grabs him by his clothes, giving him a stern threat to leave him alone. He then tells the group to find something better to do with their weekend, if they have so much time on their hands. Afterwards, Valier heads back to his place, sorting through his thoughts. He concludes that Kair and Erhi must have been the ones who followed him. Now, thanks to their spying, rumors will probably spread about him associating with psychotic thugs from the streets. He sighs, realizing these rumors are only going to worsen his reputation. Just then, there's a knock on his door. He assumes it's Kair and the others, which only fuels his irritation as he heads to answer it. But when he opens the door, he finds Ellen standing there instead. She informs him that an upperclassman is asking for him at the training grounds. Valier follows Ellen to the training grounds, where he spots a female senior disciplining his classmates. Ellen joins the others, resuming her own punishment without complaint, but Valier simply stands there, unmoved. The senior, noticing his defiance, yells at him to get down on the floor, clearly trying to assert her authority. Valier, however, remains unfazed. With a calm but challenging tone, he responds that he won't take orders from a brat like her. His bold reply shocks her, leaving her momentarily speechless. The other students look on, surprised by his refusal to comply, and the nerve he shows in standing up to an upperclassman. The upperclassman, stunned by Valier's boldness, demands if he even knows who she is. Valier simply smirks, and for a moment, he considers flicking her forehead if she doesn't back off. The senior, growing timid at his unwavering confidence, realizes she can't intimidate him and mutters that he'll regret this before dashing off. Once she's gone, Valier turns his attention to his classmates, who are still doing the punishment exercises. He asks them what's actually going on. One of them explains that this punishment is a long-standing tradition in Class A, passed down for generations. It's meant to remind students to leave their social rank at the door while at the temple. As part of this tradition, an upperclassman who comes from a commoner background takes the role of enforcing it, setting an example to prevent anyone from trying to pull rank or assert superiority based on their status. Valier listens thoughtfully, understanding now that the punishment isn't just about authority. She's even gone as far as adding a rule that they must lose to Class B, further frustrating some of the students. As Valier stands apart, Harriet approaches him, clearly concerned. She asks if he's prepared to take responsibility if things go wrong, warning that the upperclassman will be even less forgiving after his defiant act. But Valier seems entirely unbothered. He shrugs and tells her that the upperclassmen can't stop them from attending class or getting rest, and that if any of them dare to lay a hand on him, they can simply report it to the teachers. Valier goes on to say that, having grown up on the streets, he has his own self-respect and isn't a coward like the others who comply out of fear. And Harriet, feeling both irritated and anxious, snaps back at him, shouting that if his actions disrupt her school life in any way, she'll make him pay for it. Valier's eyes narrow, his gaze turning cold. He warns her that if she tries to mess with him, he'll pay her back in kind. Without hesitation, he even calls her a bird brain, showing just how little her threat affects him. Just as Harriet prepares to retort, a group of upperclassmen barges into the training grounds with Rudina. Their leader steps forward, demanding to know who dared to talk back to Rudina. Rudina points directly at Valier, and the leader's eyes narrow as he sizes him up. Without hesitation, the leader asserts that he doesn't care how high Valier might rank on the noble ladder, but Valier cuts him off, clarifying that he's neither noble nor from the imperial family, just a bum from the streets. Boldly, Valier asks if the leader has a problem with that. The leader smirks and asks what makes Valier think he can disregard the rules followed by the nobles and royals. Valier coolly replies that it doesn't matter where he comes from. What matters to him is having his own dignity. Irritated, the leader suddenly punches Valier in the stomach, then follows up with a smack to his face, sneering that as a student in the royal class, it's his duty to follow royal class customs. Valier, refusing to back down, tries to land a punch, but the upperclassman dodges and retaliates with another strike, launching into a beating. However, in a swift move, Valier surprises everyone by reaching down and grabbing the leader in a sensitive spot, clenching tightly. The leader cries out in agony, and some of his friends move forward to intervene, but Valier warns them to stay back, threatening to crush it totally if they take another step. The friends exchange uneasy glances, and at the leader's urgent nod, they reluctantly back off, realizing they're at Valier's mercy. Valier releases his grip, watching the leader's pained expression turn submissive. He smirks, feeling that his message is clear. He's not someone to be messed with. He leans in, warning the leader that if he dares to mess with him again, he'll make sure he loses that thing for good. Turning to Rudina, he gestures for her to take the leader away, asserting his dominance. Before Rudina can react, another upperclassman steps forward. Calm and composed, she introduces herself as Adriana, a second year in the royal class. She tells Valier not to escalate the situation further, explaining that the upperclassmen don't truly want to punish the first years. It's a tradition that's been passed down, and they're under pressure to keep it going. She adds that Rudina, despite her tough stance, is actually a kind person and only acted on the orders of the upperclassmen. If she refused, the third years would step in to enforce the tradition with even harsher methods. Valier, however, remains unfazed. With a dismissive wave, he states that the third years are welcome to try, and he even invites them to come Monday night. He scoffs, wondering aloud if they'll be brave enough to make Virtus himself drop to the ground. Adriana watches him closely, sensing that Valier is different from the others and not someone easily intimidated. She sighs but decides not to press the issue further, recognizing that forcing him won't achieve anything. Valier meets with Virtus later, and the two engage in a brief but pointed conversation. Virtus confirms that there is indeed a custom like the one Valier encountered with the upperclassmen in the royal class, and he had been wondering when they would make their move. He asks Valier what his plan is if the upperclassmen show up on Monday. Valier, maintaining his cool, confidently replies that the upperclassmen won't come. However, if they do, it would only make them look ridiculous. He explains that they would never dare strike an imperial prince, especially one who refuses to comply with their demands, as it would create a scandal. But, on the other hand, if they back down, it would make them look weak and even worse. He smirks, certain that either way, they will be caught in a no-win situation. Virtus listens to this and, after a moment of reflection, remarks that Valier's actions could be seen as a significant betrayal, a big sin in royal terms, since he had essentially sold him out as a prince. Virtus goes on to say that, under normal circumstances, he would annihilate Valier's entire family and relatives for such an offense. Instead, Virtus decides that it's only fair to call in a marker, as Valier owes him a favor. With a smirk, Virtus asks Valier to keep an eye on Charlotte. Valier, understanding the gravity of this request, agrees without hesitation. On his way back to his room, Valier reflects on the fact that Harriet had apparently whined to Virtus about him. He finds it somewhat amusing, though the thought also leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. As he walks through the hallways, he spots Harriet sitting at a table, enjoying a quiet tea break. She seems deep in thought, unaware of his approach. An idea strikes him, and a mischievous grin spreads across his face. He decides to tease her a bit. As he passes by, he casually calls her bird brain. The moment the words leave his mouth, Harriet's reaction is swift and immediate. She glares at him, her face turning slightly pink as she scowls. She snaps at him, reminding him that she had already told him not to call her that. Valier, unfazed, calmly explains that he was in the middle of a monologue when she interrupted. He then adds that he thought she was bright, but now he realizes she's just a bird brain. Harriet, now visibly irritated, tries to defend herself. She accuses him of trying to provoke her, hoping she'll use her social status to cause trouble and earn penalty points. Valier, however, doesn't take her seriously. He tells her she's overthinking it, and that he didn't have such an elaborate plan in mind. He brushes off her concerns with an easy nonchalance, but adds, almost playfully, that the way she overreacts is actually quite cute. The words hit her harder than he expects. Harriet's face flushes a deep shade of red, and she stammers, clearly flustered by his casual comment. Valier, noticing her reaction, doesn't miss a beat. He goes on to remark that she should act her age and stop being so childish. But despite his teasing tone, there's a hint of fondness in his words, as if he enjoys seeing her this way. With a final teasing glance, he turns and heads to his room, leaving Harriet behind in a stunned silence. On Monday, before class begins, a group of second-year upperclassmen arrive at Class 1A. At the front of the group is Ard de Gretus, the heir to the Gretus family, with an air of determination and anger, before he steps forward to address Valier. The other students fall silent, sensing the gravity of the situation. Ard is clearly seeking a confrontation. Ard places his gloves on the table, a symbolic gesture of challenge. His presence commands attention, and he makes it clear that he holds Valier responsible for an offense to his honor that occurred a few days ago. The tension in the room is thick as everyone waits to see how Valier will respond. Ard gives him the choice of time and place for the duel, making it clear that their dispute will be settled with a formal challenge. Valier, without hesitation, agrees to the duel. His calm acceptance surprises those around him, especially Rudina, who had anticipated a more drawn-out response. Valier's lack of concern is almost unsettling, as he remains composed in the face of such provocation. Ard, sensing Valier's confidence, warns him that he won't be treated lightly this time. He intends to make Valier pay for the previous humiliation and will not allow him to escape easily. Rudina tries to approach Valier, her expression filled with concern as she warns him about the gravity of the duel. She explains that Ard de Gretus is no ordinary opponent. He's ranked third in Class A of the second year, which means he's not only skilled but could easily push someone like Valier to the edge, potentially even killing him in the process. Her voice is filled with genuine worry for Valier's safety, but he simply shrugs off her concerns, barely acknowledging the threat. Valier responds that he doubts Ard would take things that far. His indifference to the danger surprises Rudina, who can't understand why he would agree to a duel with such high stakes, especially considering his lack of evident talent. She presses him, suggesting that he could still back out and apologize to Ard if he feels threatened. She even suggests he could beg for forgiveness to avoid a dangerous confrontation. However, Valier's response is firm and without hesitation. He tells her that if Ard manages to beat him to the point of almost killing him, then yes, he'll beg, but he adds that he doubts it will come to that. His acceptance of the duel is not about the fight itself, it's about something deeper, something he needs to confront in order to unlock his talent. Valier's mind is set on using this duel as a way to push himself to the limit. He believes that only by being pushed into a corner, where survival and victory seem impossible, will he be able to break through the mental barriers that are holding him back. The duel between Valier and Ard is scheduled to take place in 2 weeks, with the venue set for the indoor training grounds at the first-year Class A dormitory. As the participants have agreed, Effenhauser will act as the official witness, ensuring that the event is fair and that there are no misunderstandings. The news of the upcoming duel quickly spreads, reaching not only the first-year students but also Class B. Ludwig, a fellow student, approaches Valier during the training, concern etched on his face. He pleads with Valier to reconsider and beg for forgiveness from Ard instead of going through with the duel. Valier, however, remains firm in his stance, replying that it's not as simple as that. Despite his calm demeanor, it's clear that the pressure is starting to take its toll. By the end of the physical training session, Valier is completely exhausted, his body drained from the intense workout. As Valier makes his way back to the classroom, he's handed a letter by Charlotte, who coldly states that he should remain in his classroom after school. She doesn't elaborate further, leaving him to wonder what this could be about. The note feels strangely formal, and Valier can't help but recall that this is the first time they will be speaking since the incident at the Demon King's castle. He sits at his desk, his thoughts racing, trying to prepare himself for whatever Charlotte has planned. He knows that whatever conversation awaits them, it won't be a simple one. He anticipates that it might be about the duel, or perhaps about something more personal. The door to the classroom opens, and Charlotte enters, her presence commanding and composed as always. Without any small talk, she walks up to Valier. He asks what she wants, expecting some form of clarity. But instead, Charlotte's response is cryptic. She simply states that she knows exactly who he is. Valier feels a wave of nervousness wash over him when Charlotte speaks. For a moment, he wonders if she knows who he really is. His heart races as he tries to keep his cool and asks her what she means by her statement. Charlotte, however, remains calm, almost detached. She tells Valier that she doesn't usually associate with people like him, but after hearing that he's from the streets, she decided to look into him. Through some careful investigation, she found out that he is connected to the Thieves Guild, the same group that funds the Rotary Club. This shocks Valier, who had thought his past would remain hidden. He's impressed, though, by how easily Charlotte uncovered such details. It shows just how much influence she has. Her ability to piece together information from so few scraps proves that nothing can escape her notice. But Charlotte isn't finished. She gives Valier a cold, calculating look and tells him that if he refuses to do what she wants, she'll call in the city guards to clear out the Thieves Guild. Valier realizes that if she wants, she can make his life incredibly difficult, even destroy the connections he's worked hard to build. Then, Charlotte hands him a picture, one that Valier immediately recognizes. It's a photo of himself in one of his past disguises. Charlotte tells him that she wants him to find the boy in the picture. She doesn't care if the boy is alive or dead, but she wants him tracked down. Valier is caught off guard again. This is not just a request, it's a demand. Charlotte expects results, and she makes it clear that if he doesn't give her the information she wants, there will be consequences. Valier is left in a state of confusion, trying to figure out how he can possibly find himself. He wonders what she expects of him, how he could track down someone he's essentially trying to avoid. However, as he thinks more about Charlotte's words, he starts to glean a few clues. It's clear that she suspects the boy has ended up as a beggar on the streets, considering he had been a student from the temple and was once tied to the streets. Charlotte must have thought Valier would be the best person to find him, and she seems to think that someone like him might have the necessary connections to locate the boy. Valier's mind races. He starts piecing together why Charlotte is so intent on this search. It's not just because of the boy's disappearance, but because of her personal stake in finding him. As he reflects on Charlotte's desperate efforts to find the boy, a sense of unease settles in. She's not just looking for answers, she's emotionally invested, and her determination makes him feel like his deceptions will eventually catch up to him. He knows he can't reveal his true identity to her. As he's lost in his thoughts, Harriet appears, her usual teasing grin on her face. She wastes no time bringing up the upcoming duel, mentioning that she's heard how frightening Ard is, and asking if Valier is scared. He doesn't hesitate to admit that he is afraid. There's no point in pretending otherwise. But then, she presses further, asking why he agreed to the duel if he's scared. His response is simple: he must have lost his mind. But there's a certain seriousness to her that makes him pause. She says she'll be watching his bloody face from the front row, and leaves with a playful wink. Her words linger in Valier's mind. The duel is a real risk, one that could leave him seriously injured or worse. Determined to take matters into his own hands, Valier heads to the training grounds. He watches as Cliffman, the 5th-ranked student, and Ellen, a skilled fighter in her own right, practice their swordsmanship every day. Their movements are fluid, precise, and effortlessly powerful. But Valier knows they won't be able to teach him what he needs to know. They're too far ahead in their training, and their styles don't align with what he needs to build his own foundation. He realizes that what he needs more than anything is a solid base to grow from. Valier picks up the wooden sword with determination, intending to practice his swordsmanship on the training dummies. His first slash, however, is clumsy, and he quickly stumbles to the ground. A wave of frustration hits him as he realizes just how far he has to go. The path ahead is going to be long and grueling. He watches Cliffman and Ellen practice with ease, their movements fluid and powerful. He forces himself to keep swinging, despite the pain in his arms and the exhaustion in his muscles. Each swing feels heavy, each move awkward, but he keeps at it, hoping that somehow he'll improve. Hours pass, and by nightfall, Valier is alone in the training grounds. Sweat drips down his face, and his body aches with the strain. The blisters on his hands throb painfully as he throws the wooden sword to the side, slumping to the ground. He can't help but feel a sense of admiration for Cliffman and Ellen. Their tolerance for pain, their strength, and their discipline are impressive. He knows that he has a long way to go before he can match their level, but he can't afford to give up. He pushes himself to stand again, even as his hands bleed from the blisters. As he takes a moment to catch his breath, just then Adriana enters the training grounds. She spots Valier sitting on the floor, looking worn out and frustrated. She walks over to him and informs him that she's come as a favor to Rudina, who is worried that Ard might kill Valier in the duel due to his anger. Adriana's tone is concerned but matter-of-fact. She adds that while she sees Valier trying to train, it won't be enough in just 2 weeks. If he continues at this pace, he will be easily defeated by Ard. She even goes as far as to suggest that he apologize and back out of the duel, but Valier responds that he knows the risks. He simply needs a good beating, something to push him beyond his limits. Adriana, seeing his stubbornness, picks up a wooden sword and begins to demonstrate a graceful and precise sword dance for him. She moves effortlessly, her strikes flowing one after the other in a seamless rhythm. Valere watches in awe as she displays the beauty of swordsmanship, something he desperately wants to learn. After finishing, Adriana looks at him and tells him to try and replicate what she just did. Valere grips the wooden sword with resolve, determined to imitate Adriana's practiced movements. Taking a deep breath, he plants his feet, lifting the weapon with focused intent. Yet his first swing is awkward, his balance shaky, and he quickly stumbles forward, landing on his knees in frustration. Adriana observes carefully, noting his stance and the weakness in his posture. Moving closer, she gently lifts his arm, feeling the strain in his muscles. They are too tense, weakened, and fatigued. Continuing like this would only lead to injury. With calm precision, Adriana channels a warm, soothing spell, sending a gentle light through his limbs. Valere feels a wave of relief as the holy magic eases his aches, loosening the tension from his tired muscles. Energy returns to his arms, and a renewed strength flows through his body, leaving him feeling light and ready. He stands, adjusts his grip on the wooden sword, and prepares for another attempt, this time with improved confidence and focus. However, despite his renewed vigor, his second swing is as clumsy as the first. Adriana's thoughtful gaze shifts as she assesses his movements. She recognizes that his foundational strength is severely underdeveloped. Physical training alone will be ineffective without a stronger base. Realizing this, Adriana devises a plan for him to build stamina and basic strength before advancing with weapon drills. Valere rises earlier than usual the next morning, the sky still a shade of dark blue as dawn approaches. Moments later, Adriana arrives promptly, her presence focused and ready for their training session. Without delay, she instructs him to start with stretches, preparing his muscles for the run ahead. Valere, though eager, feels a pang of concern and voices his hesitation, wondering if her classmates might think poorly of her for helping him with such basic training. Adriana's response is firm and resolute. She sees no issue in assisting him. To her, both strength and skill are essential, and she values the chance to improve by helping him, ensuring Ard won't be accused of cruelty for targeting an untrained underclassman. After a round of stretches, they set off at the training grounds, Adriana's pace swift and steady as Valere trails behind, already feeling the strain. He pushes himself to keep up, but his stamina quickly wanes. Adriana notices his exhaustion, and with a flicker of holy magic, she sends a refreshing spell his way, infusing him with a slight boost of energy. As the rejuvenating warmth seeps into his muscles, Valere remarks on the impressive speed and endurance of the aspiring holy knights, playfully suggesting they would dominate a marathon with their abilities. Adriana responds by mentioning Ludwig, a standout among them, who once ran a full circuit around the temple without faltering, to which Valere replied that just who Ludwig is. After enduring 3 intense hours of core exercises and physical training for swordsmanship, Valere feels every muscle in his body aching, pushed to the brink of exhaustion. Adriana watches him closely, prepared to channel her holy magic to rejuvenate him each time he verges on collapsing. Before they head back inside, Adriana advises him on the importance of eating frequently to sustain himself through the extreme training he's undertaken. Valere takes her words to heart, deciding to stop by the Royal Class Cafeteria to find something to eat before breakfast officially begins. The Royal Class Cafeteria is a prestigious establishment, its sole responsibility being the health and nutrition of the Royal Class students. Staffed by master chefs who craft the finest meals, the cafeteria offers not only exquisite breakfast, lunch, and dinner options, but also late-night snacks and refreshments. As Valere steps inside, he spots Ellen already there, munching on a whole snack of beef jerky. Feeling famished from the training, he asks her if that's all that's available in the kitchen. She points him to some basic ingredients: bread, eggs, and a few other essentials. Taking her suggestion, Valere heads into the kitchen, opting to make something quick and easy to replenish his energy. Valere quickly puts together a simple meal, savoring the warm aroma and satisfying sight of the food. His modest meal catches Ellen's attention, her gaze fixed and her mouth practically watering. Without hesitation, he offers her a bite, not expecting her to devour it with such speed. As he watches in astonishment, Ellen eats with a voracious appetite, and before he can react, more than half of his food has disappeared. Shocked, he manages to ask her to slow down, but she continues at the same pace, finally looking up to say she was simply hungry. Slightly exasperated, he asks her if they'll be in the same classes today. She confirms they will, and he makes a plan to get back at her, inviting her to lunch afterward, where he'll ensure she tries Cheonggukjang again. Back in his room, Valere prepares for the day, slipping into his uniform with a newfound sense of determination. The training, though grueling, is already starting to yield results, a glimpse of the progress he's capable of making. The impending duel, he realizes, is only a small milestone on his path. It marks a beginning, a chance to demonstrate that he's more than a talentless individual with only wit to rely on. He's determined to cultivate true skill, knowing his body will continue to grow and strengthen with each hour he dedicates to his training. A sense of urgency presses on him to awaken his hidden ability of self-deception as soon as possible. As Valier watches Ellen struggle through their lunch, he can't help but feel both amused and perplexed. She seems visibly uncomfortable with the strong flavors of the cheonggukjang he's served, yet she stubbornly presses on, perhaps out of pride or sheer determination. He smirks, realizing she could have declined, but the fact that she followed him to the cafeteria anyway piques his curiosity. Does she have a hidden fondness for free food? Playfully, he teases her for freeloading, hinting that she might simply be here for the meal. Ellen shoots him a sharp look, retorting that she'll buy him lunch next time, an offer that surprises him with its sincerity. Yet Valier's training and plans extend beyond mere rivalries or small paybacks. The gate incident, a looming catastrophe he himself had woven into the storyline of his novel, drives his dedication. He isn't training this hard just to prove himself against an arrogant upperclassman. He's preparing for the apocalyptic event he knows is coming. In that scenario, countless lives will be on the line, and survival won't be guaranteed for anyone who lacks strength or skill. The frustration of his current weakness gnaws at him, intensifying his resolve. He's intent on being more than a talentless character. He wants to be someone with both a sharp edge to his personality and the strength to wield it. Later, back in the cafeteria, Valier spots Ellen devouring an impressive pile of sausages. Her appetite catches him off guard, and he notices the snack counter is completely empty, raising his suspicion that she's already raided the snacks earlier. Amused yet again, he observes her chomping away, realizing she's eating the sausages cold, straight from the refrigerator. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks why she didn't at least warm them up. Ellen, entirely unbothered, admits she doesn't know how to use the stove. Deciding Ellen might benefit from a little culinary guidance, Valier takes it upon himself to teach her some basic cooking skills. As they set up in the kitchen, he watches in astonishment as she chops ingredients with a surprising level of skill, her knife work almost akin to that of a trained temple chef. Guiding her through each cooking step, he's impressed by how quickly she catches on, and soon enough, they've whipped up a simple meal together. As soon as they sit down, Ellen digs in immediately, ignoring the steam rising from her plate. The food is still scalding, and she recoils slightly, reaching for her water as Valier quickly fetches more to help her cool down. Despite the minor setback, Ellen devours the meal with her usual enthusiasm, visibly pleased with the result. After finishing, Valier heads back to his room, only to find an unexpected visitor waiting for him. A maid stands by the entrance, her posture formal and her gaze steady. He hesitates, immediately questioning if she's from Virtus or Charlotte, two households known for occasionally sending attendants. But before he can ask, the maid steps forward, gently closing the door behind him. With a graceful nod, she introduces herself as Sarkagur. Her presence, self-assured and poised, takes him by surprise, and he can't help but wonder how she managed to slip into his room undetected. Seeing the curiosity in his expression, Sarkagur assures him that it was a simple matter, and she informs him that she will be coming to see him personally from now on. Sarkagur, with her calm and composed demeanor, informs Valier about the hidden supernatural power that the princess, Charlotte, supposedly possesses. According to Sarkagur, there are rumors and suspicions among the prince's faction. Some doubt the existence of Charlotte's powers, believing she might be feigning or exaggerating her abilities. This skepticism has led to a veil of secrecy around the topic, even preventing the prince himself from knowing the truth about his sister's mysterious gift. Only two people, besides the emperor, are aware of the specifics. Mustang, the homeroom teacher of Class B, who has been entrusted with keeping watch over the royal students, and Charlotte's specially assigned instructor for the supernatural arts. Listening intently, Valier begins to piece together the situation. If Charlotte indeed possesses such powers, they are likely unsettling or dangerous, which might explain the heavy restrictions and secrecy. He wonders what kind of ability would be deemed too problematic or unsettling to reveal, even within royal circles. The sheer mystery surrounding it adds an ominous air, and he feels a growing curiosity mixed with caution. Turning to Sarkagur, Valier suggests halting the investigation if there is any real risk involved. He doesn't want Sarkagur getting into trouble over something they'll likely discover in time, especially given how tightly the palace has contained the knowledge. With a thoughtful pause, he then brings up Charlotte herself, mentioning that she seems to have been seeking him out recently. Sarkagur's concern for Valier's safety deepens, urging him to leave the situation behind altogether. But Valier, ever calculating, dismisses the idea, knowing that abandoning his post might save his life, but would spell the end of the Rotary Club he's worked hard to establish. Seeking Sarkagur's perspective, he muses about faking his own death as an escape strategy. even contemplating the possibility of leaving fabricated evidence to make his supposed demise seem credible. However, he quickly realizes that deceiving the princess in this way might backfire. If Charlotte believes he has fulfilled his purpose, there's a high likelihood she'll dispose of him regardless, deeming him either expendable or, worse, a potential threat if he refuses her demands. Weighing his options, Valere makes a shrewd decision to play a more subtle game. Instead of fully complying or outright refusing her, he will ration information, keeping her interest piqued but never fully satisfied. This way, Charlotte will continue to rely on him, seeing him as a useful asset rather than a disposable pawn. By carefully controlling the flow of information, he avoids making her a direct adversary while securing his position. He is determined not to cross her openly. Becoming her enemy would be far too dangerous, but he also intends to keep his distance from becoming her mere tool. Valere's mind then shifts to Virtus, understanding that the prince might eventually take an interest in him. If he positions himself carefully, he could manipulate both Charlotte and Virtus to his advantage. Observing their calculating natures, Valere comes to the unsettling realization that, regardless of who takes the throne, both siblings would rule with the same relentless ambition. With this insight, he senses an opportunity to wield influence, slipping between the two powers for his own gain, to which Sarkagir was impressed by Valere's thinking. During a quick break in their training, Valere watches Adriana closely, amused by the irony that she, so devoted to her role as a holy knight, unknowingly trains the very person who will one day become the next demon king. He marvels at the contrast between her gentle but determined manner and the immense power he hides within himself, a power she might one day oppose without realizing she once helped strengthen it. Curious, he asks her why she doesn't use holy spells to ease her own fatigue during their exercises. Adriana explains her philosophy. Relying on holy magic to recover would hinder genuine growth. To her, it's like misusing awakening potions, a shortcut that cheats the body's natural ability to improve and adapt. She reinforces the need for him to maintain a balanced diet, emphasizing that training results only come when he draws on his own strength and endurance, without crutches. Her words hold a truth that resonates with Valere, fueling his resolve to push his limits while staying self-reliant, even as he hides his darker ambitions. As they prepare to resume, Valere's gaze shifts to Ludwig, who's chatting with two female students nearby. In the original storyline, Ludwig would typically be caught up in Class A's taunts and provocations, pushing him toward his own development and hardships. But because Valere has taken on a more active role in his interactions with Class A, Ludwig has now become somewhat of an overlooked figure, no longer the center of conflict, and instead a quiet observer. Seeing Valere lost in thoughts, Adriana called out to him so they could continue the training. Valere was standing in the kitchen, looking at Ellen in surprise as she confidently told him she was going to cook beef stew. He watched as she began cooking. He immediately noticed it was too salty. Not wanting to waste the meal, he decided to take over and finish the cooking himself, adjusting the flavors to make it better. Afterward, Valere asked Ellen to taste it, and when she did, she smiled and said it was good. Valere was pleased. Valere jokingly told her that she should be thankful the temple accepted her, or her parents might have gone broke trying to feed her with how much she ate. Ellen shot him a glare, not at all happy with his teasing. She quickly snapped back, saying that she never wanted to come to the temple in the first place. It was the temple that wanted her here. Valere couldn't resist continuing to poke fun at her, which only made her more upset. In retaliation, Ellen decided to get back at him in a way that made Valere regret his teasing. She began to cruelly teach him swordsmanship, pushing him harder than he expected as payback for his constant teasing. Ellen doesn't just criticize Valere's swordsmanship, she points out everything that needs fixing. She's precise in her instructions, noticing the smallest mistakes in his form and technique. She gives him clear advice on how to adjust his movements, telling him how to hold the sword properly, how to step with the right timing, and how to use his body more effectively in combat. What really surprises Valere is that she doesn't stop there. She also spars with him, offering him the chance to practice against a moving target. Training with someone who can move and react to his actions is far more helpful than he had imagined. He soon realizes that sword fighting isn't just about strength or speed, it's about coordination. 2 days before the duel, Ellen sets up a unique training exercise for Valere. She tells him to hold his sword while she strikes it repeatedly. With each hit, she notices his grip is incredibly weak. Ellen warns him that if he loses his sword during the match, it will be over for him. After a while, the sword breaks in half, surprising him. He stares at the broken pieces, unsure of how it happened. Ellen explains that the practice swords are purposely weak. The temple doesn't want students to have weapons that could cause serious harm. Valere walks over to grab another practice sword, but Ellen stops him. She tells him that if he continues this way, he will definitely lose the duel. Valere, feeling frustrated but accepting the truth, admits that he knows he's not ready. But Ellen doesn't stop there. She tells him there is still a way for him to win. Valier is intrigued, wondering what she means. Adriana hands Valier a bottle of water, and he thanks her as he takes a drink. She then praises him for how well he did during training, encouraging him to stay in his best condition and avoid doing anything strenuous before the duel the next day. Valier nods in agreement, taking her advice seriously. However, despite Adriana's words, Valier can't shake the feeling of unease. Tomorrow is the day of the duel, and he finds himself deep in thought. His mind drifts back to when Ellen had mentioned that there was a way for him to win, but she never gave him the full details. He starts to wonder what that way could be. In his confusion, Valier turns to Adriana, asking if she might know what Ellen meant. Adriana, however, shakes her head, telling him she doesn't know. Valier's heart sinks. If Adriana doesn't know, then he feels hopeless. He admits to her, a bit defeated, that if he loses tomorrow, then that's just the way it is. Even though Valier feels defeated, he can't ignore the progress he's made thanks to both Adriana and Ellen. His training from the past week has definitely improved his skills, and he can see it in his status dashboard. Yet, as he looks at his stats, something catches his eye. A F+ in combat ability. The grade makes him feel even more pathetic, reminding him of how far he still has to go. Feeling dispirited, Valier can't help but be frustrated. His stats haven't improved as much as he hoped, and the vague talent that has appeared seems to be of little help. The next day arrives, and Valier is surprised by the crowd gathered to watch the duel. It's not just his classmates. There are many more students than he expected, including first years, and even a good number from Class A. Harriet and other members of Class A are already present, though Virtus and Rihanna are nowhere to be seen. Some students from Class B are also there, along with a few unfamiliar faces. A few of Valier's friends cheer him on, expressing their belief that he can win. However, his confidence falters as he notices Charlotte in the crowd, glaring at him. Her stare sends a shiver down his spine, making him feel uneasy. Harriet, as always, taunts him, reminding him that he should prepare for a thorough beating. Then, Ard appears, and Valier sees that a large portion of Class A from the second year is there, likely to watch the duel. The moderator steps forward, signaling that both opponents are ready. He goes over the major reasons for the duel, confirming that both Valier and Ard understand and agree to them. Then he asks them to state what they wish to gain from victory. Ard is the first to speak, his voice cold and confident. He demands that if he wins, Valier must kneel before the upperclassmen, ask for forgiveness, and swear to always show respect to his seniors in the future. Valier's eyes narrow at the request, but he holds his ground. When it's his turn, Valier states his terms firmly. If he wins, he wants the upperclassmen to stop demanding unreasonable tasks from him and his classmates. He insists that they must also apologize for their actions. As the moderator steps forward to announce the start of the duel, Ard interrupts, requesting the right to choose his champion as part of the dueling party. The crowd falls silent, surprised by the request. Ard points to Mayatan, a third-year student from Class A. Valier's heart skips a beat when he sees who the champion is. Mayatan is known for his incredible skill, and the fact that Ard has chosen him to fight in his place sends a clear message to Valier. This is no ordinary duel. The third-year student is someone far beyond Valier's level. Valier is shocked. He doesn't fully understand why Ard would go this route, but he quickly realizes that this move isn't just about winning the duel. It's about sending a message. They want to squash his confidence and make an example of him, but Valier stands firm. He remembers Ellen's words from a previous conversation when she expressed how confident she was in her abilities. She even wished that she could be his champion, believing that she would bring him victory without a doubt. Adriana, too, had expressed a similar desire. From her seat, she watches intently, giving Valier a stern look. Valier knows that Adriana, though not directly involved, is rooting for him in her own way. The moderator, thinking there were no further objections, prepares to announce the start of the duel. However, just as he's about to proceed, Mayatan, with an air of supreme confidence, speaks up and changes the rules. He declares that the duel will end when one of the parties admits defeat. Mayatan, sure of his victory, seems eager to set this condition, confident that he will dominate the fight. The moderator turns to Valier, asking if he agrees to these new terms. Valier, after a moment's consideration, nods in agreement. However, he surprises everyone by proposing his own rule. He says that, as the underdog in this duel, he requests a restriction to level the playing field. He admits he's uncertain who to choose as his champion, between Ellen and Adriana, and seeks a way to ensure fairness. The moderator looks at both parties before making a decision. He announces that, in light of the new rule, Mayatan will be forbidden from using his left hand during the duel. Mayatan, perhaps a bit surprised but still confident, agrees to the restriction without protest. Valier, however, understands the weight of this decision. Limiting Mayatan's use of his left arm is no small matter, and Valier knows it could make a significant difference in the fight. In the past, he might have underestimated the importance of such a restriction, but after his intense training with Ellen, he recognizes just how much of an advantage even a small restriction can create. The duel begins, and Valier immediately starts formulating his strategy. Valier decides that his best option is to take advantage of Mayaton's arrogance. He plans a surprise attack when Mayaton lets his guard down, believing he has the fight in the bag. However, as the duel progresses, Valier is shocked by the overwhelming strength Mayaton displays, even with his left hand tied behind his back. Mayaton's attacks are so powerful that Valier almost loses his grip on his sword. He can't believe it. How is Mayaton this strong with just one hand? The thought flashes through Valier's mind that Mayaton must be incredibly skilled to fight so fiercely with only one arm. But what catches his attention next is Mayaton's relentless focus on Valier's sword, trying to disarm him at every opportunity. Before Valier can adjust his strategy, Mayaton launches a powerful strike, and in an instant, Valier feels his sword slip from his hand. Time seems to slow as his weapon flies out of his grasp, and he stumbles backward, crashing to the ground. He's stunned. How did things escalate so quickly? His mind races as he scrambles to recover, realizing how fast and skilled Mayaton truly is. Mayaton stands over him, his expression cold and mocking. Valier struggles to pick up his sword, his hand bleeding from the blows he has endured. Every time he tries to reach for it, Mayaton kicks him back, refusing to let him stand. His body aches from the pain, and the sting in his palm intensifies, but despite the overwhelming exhaustion, Valier refuses to surrender. He can feel the weight of defeat pressing on him, yet something inside him pushes him to keep going. Mayaton continues to taunt him, confident that Valier will give in. But Valier, though broken and battered, still holds on to a thread of determination. He knows he is outmatched and that his body is betraying him, but he cannot bring himself to accept defeat. Ellen watches from the sidelines, her frustration growing as she sees Valier being pummeled without mercy. The unfairness of it stirs something inside her, but she feels helpless, unable to intervene. Her eyes stay fixed on Valier, willing him to rise above the torment. Despite the agony, Valier summons every ounce of strength he has left. His hand, burning with pain, reaches out again. It takes all his willpower to push his body upright. The movement is slow and shaky, but he grips the sword, determined not to let it slip away. The weight of it in his hand is reassuring, a reminder that he still has the will to fight, even if it seems hopeless. Standing with difficulty, Valier faces Mayaton, no longer with fear, but with a quiet defiance. Mayaton, surprised by the sudden surge of strength, momentarily hesitates. He hadn't expected Valier to get back up, but now, seeing the determination in his eyes, he realizes that the fight is not as one-sided as he had thought. Valier, realizing that his plan to awaken his supernatural power wasn't going as expected, finds himself overcome with frustration and rage. Determined to push beyond his limits, he activates his system, driven by the relentless blows he has endured. His body, still aching, reacts impulsively as he prepares to strike Mayaton once more. Mayaton dodges twice, but Valier can feel that his opponent's sword is weakening with every missed strike. Ellen's training had been spot on. The swords, though seemingly sturdy, were actually fragile. This insight, combined with his new power, gives him the advantage he needs to strike. With a surge of strength, Valier kicks Mayaton in a vulnerable spot, and the impact is enough to make Mayaton drop his sword, wincing in pain. Valier sees his chance and knows he must act quickly. If Mayaton regains his composure and retrieves his sword, Valier will be in trouble. He can't allow him that opportunity. Without hesitation, Valier rushes forward and kicks Mayaton again, determined to keep him down. But even though Mayaton stumbles, he doesn't fall unconscious. Valier had hoped the blow would be enough to end it, but Mayaton is more resilient than expected. Mayaton continues to tease Valier, urging him not to accept defeat since he knows how stubborn Valier is. Valier agrees that he won't give up, and in fact, declares that he will win, feeling a strong desire to come out on top. But Mayaton reminds him that he cannot win just because he managed to land one dirty trick. Meanwhile, Valier refuses to lose, especially after being beaten badly. He doesn't want to beg for forgiveness on his knees after already being defeated. However, as Valier thinks about it, he realizes there's no way he can win against Mayaton, since he can't even think of a way to land another punch. He doesn't have a clear plan to win, but his determination to succeed remains. So, he resolves that no matter what happens, he will see Mayaton writhing at his feet, even if it's the last thing he does. Valier believes that in a situation where he would lose, he must desire victory and be certain it will happen. Eventually, he begins to understand what he should have done, as he figures out the mechanics of how his power works. Basically, Valier's power has nothing to do with pushing himself to a psychologically tough corner, as he had always believed. Instead, he comes to realize that his power is called self-deception. It wasn't about forcing himself to reach a breaking point or enduring intense physical pain, The truth is, he needs to deceive himself into believing he can win, and then that belief itself fuels his power. In other words, his strength doesn't come from sheer will or physical skill alone, but from his ability to convince himself that victory is inevitable. Once he convinces his own mind that success is assured, his power amplifies, pushing him beyond his limits. Without hesitation, he charges at Mayaton with lightning speed, his movements swift and precise, as though he's already seen the outcome in his mind. Valier kicks Mayaton, causing him to start bleeding. Mayaton stares in shock, unable to understand how Valier managed to hurt him so easily. Without wasting a moment, Valier grabs Mayaton by the hair. Deciding to force him out of the fight, Valier resolves to make Mayaton pass out, knowing that if he does, Mayaton will lose automatically. Everyone watching is stunned, including Ellen, who can't believe Valier's sudden surge in strength and confidence. Even the moderator is taken aback by the change in Valier's energy. As he continues to press Mayaton to surrender, Valier reminds him of his earlier boasts about winning. Now, those words are coming back to haunt Mayaton, as Valier's intense determination drives him forward. The stronger Valier's unwavering belief in himself becomes, the more powerful he grows, and with each moment, it becomes clear that he truly believes he is destined to win. Valier grabs Mayaton by the hair, pulling him forward and facing him toward the watching students. With a taunting tone, Valier tells Mayaton to confess to everyone that, despite studying at the temple for 2 years longer, and despite his physical abilities and swordsmanship being far superior, he still got completely beaten by a first-year student. But Mayaton stays silent. His nose and eyes are already bleeding, making it painful to speak or even keep his head up. Seeing that Mayaton won't talk, Valier decides he'll make sure Mayaton ends up waking up in the hospital. He prepares to smash Mayaton's head against something solid to finish the fight once and for all. Just as Valier moves to do this, Mayaton finally surrenders, muttering an apology. Valier releases his grip, and Mayaton collapses to the ground, exhausted and defeated. The moderator steps forward and loudly announces Valier as the winner of the duel. Instantly, the system rewards Valier with 600 achievement points for his victory. Despite his victory, Valier feels a pang of frustration, disappointed that he didn't actually get to see Mayaton pass out. However, it turns out that Valier himself was the one who lost consciousness, and he wakes up in an unfamiliar room, staring at a strange ceiling. For a moment, he worries that something went wrong with the duel results, but he remembers winning and hopes nothing has changed. Just then, Adriana enters the room to check on him. She smiles, clearly relieved that his injuries aren't too serious. Curious, Valier asks her what happened after he passed out. Adriana explains that right after his victory was announced, he suddenly fainted, so they brought him to recover. Valier then learns from Adriana that he's actually in the dormitory recovery room, not in the hospital, as he had initially assumed. He recalls that the dormitory does indeed have a recovery room, not just the training grounds. This thought leads him to wonder if Mayaton is recovering in the same place. Adriana clarifies that Mayaton is in a separate recovery room, as they wouldn't place them together after such a fierce duel. Adriana then shares a moment from the duel, mentioning how she had been watching him the whole time. She had noticed that he saw her in the audience but chose to keep fighting alone, despite her willingness to step in and fight for him if needed. Adriana then asks Valier if he had recklessly thrown himself into the duel, hoping his supernatural abilities would suddenly awaken in the heat of battle. She confesses that she hadn't realized until now what he meant when he previously said he needed a good beating. Valier, though, doesn't want to delve into that subject. He's just glad that everything turned out fine in the end. But Adriana isn't ready to let it slide. She tells him that his plan was reckless, and that if he hadn't been lucky enough to unlock his supernatural powers at that moment, things could have ended very differently. She reminds him that training his abilities over the next 6 years won't work if he keeps putting himself in danger like that. Valier, however, understands that supernatural powers are a rare and unpredictable skill, so he decides to focus on using his achievement points to buy additional talents rather than relying only on risky awakening attempts. Still, Adriana continues to warn him against using such tactics in the future. She also advises him to keep a level head around the upperclassmen and not to get carried away just because he won this time. Once he's fully treated and discharged, Valier attends a counseling session with his classroom teacher. During their talk, he eagerly shares the story of his newly awakened skill. His teacher listens with intrigue, as he's aware that Valier has a range of aptitudes, including supernatural powers. However, he's surprised to hear that Valier actually managed to awaken this rare ability. Up until now, the teacher had doubted that such a power would ever surface. Though he initially found it reckless for Valier to duel an upperclassman, the teacher admits that, given the outcome, Valier may have been onto something. The way things ended proves that the risk Valier took may have been worth it after all. His teacher, however, points out that while hard work alone can't create talent, luck itself can sometimes be a kind of talent. With that, he He firmly forbids Valier from using his powers to attack anyone again. Valier agrees, promising not to use his abilities foolishly. His teacher, trusting Valier's character, knows that while he may have a violent streak, he isn't the type to act without purpose. Satisfied, the teacher allows him to leave. As Valier walks through the hallways, he quickly realizes that rumors of his supernatural power have already spread. Students whisper about how he managed to awaken this rare ability mid-duel, and the rumor travels not only among his fellow first-years, but also among the upperclassmen. Soon, Valier's duel becomes a hot topic of gossip throughout the royal class. After all, a first-year defeating a third-year in such dramatic fashion is rare, and it's no surprise that news of it is spreading like wildfire. Even those who disliked Valier now look at him differently, as if they sense something more than just the awakening of his supernatural power during the duel. Later, Valier runs into Harriet, someone he fully expects to throw a few critical remarks his way, as she usually does. Yet this time, she remains silent as she passes him. Surprised, Valier decides to call her back and ask why she didn't say anything to him. Harriet hesitates, clearly caught off guard, and then pieces together a response. She tells him that it was still cowardly of him to rely on his supernatural power during the duel. Valier had anticipated such a reaction from her, knowing exactly how to push the right buttons. Still, he smirks inwardly, sensing that even Harriet's words hold a different tone now. Valier chuckles and tells Harriet that he could see how uneasy she looked while he was getting pummeled, noticing the way her face went pale with anxiety. She starts to deny it, but her flustered expression betrays her, and her attempts to defend herself come out in a stammer. Valier raises his hand, as if to gently touch her shoulder, but she quickly warns him not to get any closer. To his surprise, Harriet's face crumples, and she begins to cry, asking him to stop making fun of her. Her reaction takes Valier off guard, and guilt quickly settles in. He hadn't meant to upset her like this, regretting that he pushed her too far. Valier tries everything he can to make her stop crying. He even offers her a macaron, a sweet snack he has with him, but she refuses. Valier becomes frustrated, feeling like she is crying just to annoy him. In his mind, he thinks that none of his family members ever managed to irritate him like this. When he finally asks her why she is crying, she says it's because he called her bird brain and made fun of her. Valier is shocked and can't believe what he is hearing. He points out that she called him a bum too. She stands her ground, saying she only called him that because he really is one. Valier, surprised, responds that he only called her bird brain because he thought she was cute and was trying to cheer her up. At last, she stops crying, but warns him never to touch her with his dirty hands again. Valier quickly agrees, relieved that she has calmed down. He offers her the macaron once more, and this time she takes it, calling him an old geezer for his behavior. She then asks if it hurt when he got beaten during the duel. Valier admits that it hurt a lot, like hell. She follows up with another question, wondering why he didn't give up if it was that painful. She points out that he was lucky to unlock his superpower during the fight, otherwise, things could have ended badly for him. He replies to her that during the duel, he felt so determined that he would rather die than lose to that particular opponent. She is taken aback by his words, and warns him that if he approaches every duel with that mindset, it could lead to an early death. Valier admits that he went to an extreme but is thankful he survived. Later in class, Valier sits at his desk, trying to jot down notes when Virtus walks up to him. Virtus smiles and tells Valier that he's proud of him. He says he never thought Valier could defeat anyone at school, let alone a third-year student. Valier modestly responds that it was mostly luck, and that his superpower just happened to awaken during the fight. As they continue their conversation, the student Valier dueled enters the classroom. The tension rises as the student walks toward them. Valier assumes the worst and prepares for more trouble. But, to his surprise, the student bows his head and apologizes. He admits his mistakes and apologizes sincerely. Valier is taken aback. He had been expecting harsh words or more conflict, but instead, he gets a genuine apology. The student even promises not to use verbal abuse or violence against students from lower years anymore. Valier, still surprised, acknowledges the apology. He even admits that he believes the student might not be so bad after all, considering he had the courage to own up to his mistakes. Valier explains that he only intervened because Ard, a friend of Rudina, couldn't stand seeing underclassmen treated so poorly. Valier stands up and, in a calm voice, tells the student he's also sorry for causing trouble, admitting his own role in the situation. His classmates watch in surprise, taken aback by seeing Valier and his former opponent bowing and apologizing to each other. As the student Ard turns away, Valier thinks he might also go apologize to Rudina, just to make things right. Shortly after, Mr. Effenhauser visits Valier's class, making his rounds to inform everyone about the upcoming glory ceremony scheduled for the next week. He reminds them that this ceremony is a way to celebrate their past victories. Normally, the temple remains closed for a month during this festival, but due to their curriculum, They will only have a 5-day break. Despite the shortened break, the students are thrilled. One of them jokes that he felt like he was dying from all the morning running drills the school makes them do. Valier, too, smiles gently, secretly planning to use the break to visit Alaris, though he's still figuring out the best way to approach her. Just then, Mr. Effenhauser calls Valier's name, breaking his thoughts. He announces that Valier is to be excused from all class activities for the day. Valier's eyes widened in surprise, as did those of his classmates. Mr. Effenhauser gestures for Valier to follow him, leaving everyone curious, and Valier wondering what could be so important that he's pulled out of class. Valier and Mr. Effenhauser sit under the bright sun on a wooden bench. The heat makes the wait feel longer, and Valier glances around, wondering who she might be. Mr. Effenhauser had been vague, only mentioning that someone would be arriving shortly without giving him any specifics. To fill the silence, they chat. Effenhauser brings up a seemingly random idea. Since the school has an all-mana source, they could use it to build an indoor swimming pool that stays warm during the cold winter months. He goes on to explain how rainwater is collected for use in the outdoor pool, emphasizing its practicality. Valier listens, intrigued. But before he can respond, Effenhauser gives him a sharp look and asks if he has any ulterior motives for suggesting a swimming pool during winter. Valier is caught off guard and immediately tries to clarify. Did Effenhauser really think he wanted swimming lessons during winter for selfish reasons? Before Valier can fully defend himself, Effenhauser stands up abruptly and tells him to keep waiting, then walks away. Moments later, a new figure appears from behind. It is a woman with a confident stride and sharp eyes. Valier quickly realizes she is one of the school's teachers, specifically assigned to help students control and develop their supernatural powers. The teacher introduces herself as Rolendria. She smiles warmly, expressing genuine happiness at seeing Valier finally awaken his supernatural abilities. Together, they begin a series of exercises to test and hone his abilities. After observing his progress, Rolendria commends him for his determination and focus. She tells him how proud she is that he has the confidence to set goals for himself and work tirelessly to achieve them. Rolendria then gives him a unique insight into his power. She explains that if he truly believes he is a sprinter, and if he genuinely convinces himself, he can run faster than any sprinter. She encourages him to test it out. Valier runs, pushing himself harder and faster, feeling the power coursing through him. When he stops, breathless and tired, a part of him feels exhilarated, but doubt quickly creeps in. He starts to think that perhaps this power isn't as great as it seems, and a sense of disappointment settles over him. Sensing his frustration, Rudina steps in. She gently tries to change his perspective. She shares why she admires his power, explaining that it has limitless potential as long as he believes in himself. She urges him to accept and embrace it, reminding him that even powers that seem strange or burdensome can be turned into strengths. As night falls, Valier lies in bed, unable to sleep. He replays Rudina's words in his mind, trying to make sense of everything she said. Just as he's lost in thought, his phone buzzes. He picks up the call, and a voice, another student, asks him to meet her immediately. Valier steps out into the cool night air, curious about why he's been summoned. She greets him and immediately asks how it feels to suddenly have a superpower overnight. Valier replies that he's managing, though it's a lot to take in. She nods thoughtfully, then asks another question. She's heard his superpower revolves around self-suggestion. Valier confirms this with a quiet yes, still unsure where this conversation is leading. They sit down together, still surrounded by the dim, warm glow of the streetlight. The silence stretches as Valier's curiosity grows. Why call him out at this hour when everyone else is asleep? Finally, she breaks the silence. She asks if it's true that, theoretically, he could find something, or someone, if he truly convinced himself he knew where to look. Her question leaves him momentarily stunned. He hadn't thought of using his power in such a specific way before. After a pause, he admits he's not sure if it would work like that, but he's willing to try. Before he can say more, she hands him a sheet of paper. Valier takes it and sees the image of a young boy staring back at him. She explains that it's about Charlotte, who is desperate to find this child. Unlike her and the Rotary Club, who have more time and resources, Charlotte is driven by fear and urgency. Valier holds the picture tightly, letting its details sink in as he crafts his supposed vision. He describes a scene to the student beside him, the boy riding frantically on a horse through ancient ruins, with a crowd of pursuers closing in on him. Demons loom nearby, adding to the urgency of the image. When he finishes, Valier stops, claiming it is all he can sense for now. He hopes this will end the conversation, but she grabs his hand, tears streaking her face, and pleads with him to try harder and see more. Inside, Valier feels trapped. He knows he has already lied, spinning a tale that has only fueled her hopes. Continuing down this path means deepening the deception, and eventually causing her more pain. Unsure of what else to do, He tells her that he keeps seeing the same scene repeat itself, suggesting that his powers might still be too weak. Her desperation doesn't wane. Instead, she grips his hand even tighter and begs to know if the boy is still alive. Weighed down by the lie and the pressure of the moment, Valier assures her that the child is alive. His words bring visible relief, and she finally releases her grip. She bows her head and begins to sob uncontrollably. Valier feels the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He can't stand to see her in so much pain, knowing that his false reassurances are only delaying a potentially painful truth. After a few minutes, she finally stops crying. She wipes her face, composing herself, and then asks Valier not to tell anyone about what happened. He nods, understanding her request, especially when she mentions not wanting Virtus to use this information. Her expression softens into a small smile as she explains why finding the boy is so important to her. She reveals that he saved her life when she was on the brink of losing her sanity in a place of decay and despair after suffering a defeat. In that dark moment, when she was ready to give up, it was the boy who helped her back up, offering words of comfort and reminding her that humanity had won the war. She continues, recalling how the boy tried to keep her calm despite the terrible place they were trapped in, a place capable of breaking anyone's mind. He confessed to her that he had lost his memories and couldn't recall anything from his past. Even in his own confusion and fear, he still tried to console her. She smiles faintly as she remembers how he offered her a small piece of a cookie. Since that moment, she had made up her mind to help the boy regain his memories. She tells Valier that it is the reason she has been searching for him, because even if it's only to help him remember, she is determined to be there for him. Valier questions her decision, wondering if it's truly the right thing to do. He asks if it's necessary to help him remember, especially considering the trauma he must have gone through in the demon castle. He warns her that bringing back those painful memories might only cause more suffering. Charlotte acknowledges his concerns, but insists that it's something she and the boy will need to decide together if they meet again. She pleads with Valier, asking for his help to find him with everything he can. As she prepares to leave, she promises that if Valier helps her find him, she will do anything in her power to give him whatever he asks for in return. Her determination catches Valier off guard, and he tries to caution her, telling her that it might be dangerous to make such a promise to someone like him. But Charlotte doesn't hesitate, telling him she doesn't care and walks away with purpose. Valier takes a step forward, but before he can go far, he hears a voice behind him. He turns to find Virtus standing there, watching him with an unreadable expression. Virtus remarks that Charlotte is still searching for the boy, clearly concerned. Virtus then speaks, his tone calm but carrying an underlying message. He expresses hope that Valier and Charlotte have been using the school's Rotary Club to search for the boy, rather than trying to do it on their own. Valier instantly understands what he means. Stay in your lane and don't cause any unnecessary trouble. He knows this is Virtus's way of reminding him not to overstep, to avoid drawing attention, and to rely on the established system rather than acting independently. Valier realizes that Virtus has been watching him closely ever since he joined the school, always keeping tabs on his actions. Valier responds cautiously, telling Virtus that all he has is the boy's picture and no concrete leads on where to find him. He admits that his efforts may be futile, but he says this not out of defeat, but to reassure Virtus that he isn't doing anything rash or out of line. He doesn't want to give the impression that he is becoming too involved, which might draw unwanted scrutiny. Virtus then shifts the conversation, asking if Valier knows who the boy is to Charlotte. Valier answers truthfully, saying that he doesn't know. Virtus nods, seemingly satisfied with this answer. He continues, saying that if Valier happens to see or hear anything about the boy before he does, he should let him know immediately. As he starts to walk away, he turns back once more, his eyes narrowing slightly. He asks Valier if he's running from the Thieves Guild leader, a question that catches Valier off guard. Valier quickly denies it, insisting that he has never been involved with the Thieves Guild. Virtus smirks, almost as if finding the situation amusing, but his next words carry a hint of disdain. He tells Valier that it's a shame he's only with the Rotary Club, as though it's a less respectable or less powerful affiliation. Valier stands there, still processing Virtus's words. The remark about the Thieves Guild leader lingers in his mind. Virtus's statement, saying that even if crime is swept off the streets, it will always find its way to the sewers, leaves Valier feeling more confused than before. He can't fully grasp what Virtus means, but the comment carries a sense of inevitability, as if the underworld will always have a way of resurfacing no matter how much society tries to erase it. Virtus then makes his point clear, suggesting that someone like Valier, with his potential and power, could one day rise to become the leader of the Thieves Guild. Valier could harness his abilities in a way that could give him power and influence. The suggestion catches Valier completely off guard. He is surprised and taken aback by the notion, never imagining that Virtus would see him in that light. The idea of leading a criminal organization does not sit comfortably with him, but Virtus's words linger in the back of his mind. The school day comes to an end, marking the start of the Glory Festival the next day. The students are excited and ready to go home, looking forward to the break. As Valier walks through the school grounds, he runs into Rudina, who suggests that he might come for some training during the break. Valier, still preoccupied with his thoughts about Virtus's words, tells her he plans to sleep through the break but will train before going home today. They exchange their goodbyes and Valier heads toward the field. As he trains, however, his focus is not on the exercises or improving his skills. Instead, his mind keeps returning to Virtus's words about becoming the leader of the Thieves Guild. Valier can hardly believe the conversation he has had with Virtus. To think that someone so close to the throne, someone in such a position of power, would speak so casually about dark matters. Virtus's words echo in his mind, and though Valier is shocked by everything that has been said, Virtus seems to believe that Valier has probably considered such ideas himself. It's unsettling, but the more Valier thinks about it, the more he realizes that Virtus might have a point. The suggestion that Valier could one day lead the Thieves Guild isn't just an empty statement. It feels like a calculated observation. During the break, as Valier trains with Ellen, he finds himself unable to focus. His mind drifts back to his conversation with Virtus. Ellen has to remind him to concentrate more than 3 times, but despite her efforts, Valier is simply too distracted. Finally, he admits he's too tired to continue. He knows it's not just physical exhaustion that's affecting him. It's the weight of Virtus's words that keeps circling in his thoughts, clouding his focus. As Ellen continues with her swordsmanship training, Valier decides to take a break. He heads to the kitchen to make some sandwiches for her, knowing she'll be hungry after her intense training session. But when he arrives, he is shocked by what he sees. Ellen is lying on the floor, unconscious. Ellen lies in bed, her body still weak but her mind drifting into a dream. In her dream, she is a child again, crying desperately as she tells someone named Reagan not to go, pleading with him not to leave for battle. Her voice trembles with fear, and tears fall as Reagan walks away, leaving her behind. The pain of that memory feels all too real, but suddenly everything fades, and she slowly opens her eyes. The first thing Ellen sees when she wakes up is Valier sitting by her side. He feels a wave of relief wash over him when her eyes flutter open, grateful that she is conscious again. She looks confused for a moment, her gaze unfocused, before she asks where she is. Valier answers gently, telling her she is in the infirmary, as he adds that she should try not to pass out like that again. The nurse, who had been standing nearby, chimes in with her own thoughts. She tells Ellen that she is lucky Valier found her when he did, as the situation could have turned much more serious if he hadn't carried her to the infirmary so quickly. Ellen, still groggy, glances at Valier, surprised by what the nurse says next. The nurse mentions how Valier had carried her on his back all the way here, shouting for help and making sure she got medical attention right away. Valier, hearing the praise, becomes flustered. His face flushes with embarrassment as he shyly looks away, not sure how to react to the nurse's words. As the nurse leaves the room, she calls out one last piece of advice to Ellen, telling her not to train like she's trying to die again. With a slight smile, the nurse exits, leaving the two of them alone. Valier turns to Ellen, his voice laced with concern as he asks what happened. Ellen hesitates for a moment before answering, her voice soft as she recalls what took place. While practicing, she had lost her balance and hit her head against the wooden training dummy she had been using. The impact had been hard enough to knock her out, leading to her fainting. She mentions the possibility of a concussion, and Valier's face grows more serious as the realization hits him. He had just saved her life. He presses her to admit it, and she reluctantly agrees, knowing that he's right. Valier's tone softens as he tells her to get out of bed. The nurse has already performed a healing spell on her, meaning she should be well enough to move around now. He heads toward the door, suggesting that she get dressed so they can go home and enjoy the sandwiches he made for her. Ellen watches him, still a little amazed by his behavior. She never expected Valier to be so caring, especially after everything that's happened. It's a side of him she hasn't seen before, and she feels a warmth in her chest at his thoughtful gesture. However, as Valier turns to leave, he pauses and looks back at her with a worried expression. Ellen tells him she plans to take a bath in the infirmary before they leave. Valier, more concerned about time, objects, reminding her that if she takes a bath now, they'll be running the risk of getting caught by curfew. Valier, feeling a bit awkward, tries to push aside any lingering doubts as he stands in the room waiting for Ellen. It's his first time in her room, and he tells himself that there's nothing to be worried about. After all, Ellen is younger than him, and he's confident that nothing inappropriate will happen between them. Still, he can't help but feel a bit out of place as he looks around. The room is sparsely furnished, just a suitcase and some workout equipment scattered around the space. The rain outside taps gently against the window, adding to the quiet ambiance. As he waits, He does his best to convince himself that it's not a big deal to be in a room with someone of the opposite gender. He's just here to eat and share a meal, he thinks, nothing more. When Ellen finally steps out, looking slightly refreshed after her bath, Valier lets out a small sigh of relief and suggests they eat the sandwiches he made for her. As they begin to eat, Valier notices that Ellen is lost in thought. Her usual lively energy seems absent, replaced by a quiet intensity. He gently tries to reassure her, telling her not to worry, reminding her that it's normal for anyone to feel lost or uncertain at times. He tells her that it's part of life, and everyone goes through moments where they feel like they can't do anything. Ellen looks up at him, as if she's trying to figure something out in her mind, before asking him a question that takes Valier by surprise. She asks if he would be willing to save the world, even if it meant sacrificing himself. The question lingers in the air, and Valier realizes that there's something deeper behind it. Ellen doesn't just mean saving the world in a metaphorical sense, there's an underlying fear of death in her voice. It's as if she believes that death is the absolute end, a permanent loss that no one can come back from. Ellen's words weigh heavily on Valier's mind as he listens to her speak about her brother. He can sense the deep pain in her voice, the mix of pride for the world that sees him as a hero and the anger and sorrow she feels for being left behind. To everyone else, Reagan is a hero who sacrificed himself to save the world. But to Ellen, he's the brother who chose to leave her alone, who vanished into the unknown without a second thought. Valier understands her struggle, but he also knows that it's impossible to truly know how someone would act in such a situation unless they've been through it themselves. He tries to offer a neutral perspective, telling her that no one can really say what they'd do unless they were in that same position. He doesn't want to sound dismissive of her feelings, but he can't pretend to know what Reagan's sacrifice was truly like. Then, Ellen reveals something that Valier hasn't noticed until now, the suitcase or box that had caught his attention earlier. She walks over to it and opens it, calling him over to take a look. When Valier approaches, he's taken aback by what he sees. Inside the box lies a sword, unlike any he's ever seen before. It gleams with a strange energy, and its craftsmanship is otherworldly. It's a sword forged from tears, the very essence of sorrow and sacrifice. Valier knows immediately what it is. He recognizes the sword as Lament. The name sends a chill down his spine. This is no ordinary weapon. It's the weapon of Reagan, Ellen's brother. Reagan was a legendary fighter, wielding two swords. One, Alsbringer, was said to be a divine weapon, granted by the god of war. The other, Lament, was forged by the goddess of the moon, Mensis. Lament was a rare and sacred blade, one that could only be wielded by someone of great skill and strength. Valier knows that Ellen must have inherited not just the sword, but the incredible power that comes with it. This weapon is more than just a family heirloom. It's a symbol of her brother's legacy, a reminder of his sacrifice, and now it's a part of her. Valier realizes that it's from this very sword that Ellen has honed her incredible abilities. It's no wonder she's as strong as she is. Lament has shaped her into a force to be reckoned with. Ellen smiles at him, a faint but sincere smile. She thanks him for saving her life earlier, and as she does, something unexpected happens. An achievement unlocks for Valier, a reward for getting to know Ellen's true identity, for understanding the weight of her past. The notification pops up on his screen, showing that he's earned 500 points for uncovering the mystery of Ellen's legacy. Early in the morning, Valier wakes up and dresses in a red cloth, preparing for his visit to the Aligar district during the break period. He walks through the busy streets, eventually arriving at Alaris's shop. Upon seeing him, Alaris's concern becomes evident as she hurries over to him. Though she insists that it's dangerous for him to be there, Valier calmly replies that he has already passed through many alleyways to reach the shop and intends to stay there until the break is over. However, as Valier notices Alaris's unease, it becomes clear that something is troubling her. She explains that the last time he visited, trouble followed when people traced him back to her shop because of a scroll she had been selling. Alaris continues, her tone laced with fear, as Valier confirms whether people are indeed looking for him. She answers yes, explaining that while the people aren't suspicious about her, they have been watching all the shops he visited that day, including hers. Her voice trembles slightly as she asks if he really stole the fireball scroll from a store. Valier becomes furious at the accusation and answers sharply that it was Mr. Borton's shop. He immediately recalls who might have spread the false information. With growing realization, he tells Alaris that it was a man who had given him the task, promising to pay him if he could copy the scroll and make it look like the real thing for resale. Valier explains that he had no intention of stealing the scroll, but had been tricked into thinking the task was legitimate. Alaris listens carefully, and once he finishes, she supports him, affirming that Valier had made the right call by teaching the man a lesson. Valier explains that the man practically forced the scroll on him, despite his desire to rest during the break. He admits that, although he tried to refuse, he had been pressured into accepting it. When he asks Alaris if the other club members are okay, she responds with uncertainty, mentioning that no official word has been given yet. Alaris suggests that it would be better for the Rotary Club to hold a meeting soon to update everyone on the situation. Valier agrees, and they plan to go to the club the following day. That night, as Valier lies in bed trying to sleep, he notices Alaris staring out the window, lost in thought. She suddenly asks him if he truly believes that humans are superior to each other. She shares her own view, saying that while humans are thriving in a way, they are constantly fighting and slaughtering one another in the name of progress. Valier, still lying in bed, sits up and asks her what has caused her to talk like this. He wonders if something bad has happened, but Alaris avoids the question, telling him that he will understand tomorrow. The next morning, they walk through the usual alley together. As they reach their destination, the boy rushes toward Valier and hugs him tightly, expressing his happiness upon hearing that Valier has awakened his superpower. When asked about how temple life was treating him, Valier responds sarcastically, saying it feels like he's on the verge of dying from happiness there. The others immediately understand the tone of his answer. He then shares a bit about his experiences, including a recent duel he had. The group is surprised, and the others start praising him for fighting. However, Alaris expresses concern, believing that it was Valier's anger that led to the fight. She reminds him that, as she has always advised, if he doesn't learn to control his temper, it could lead to chaos they wouldn't be able to handle. Alaris's frustration grows as she scolds him for not keeping a low profile, but Valier interrupts her, asking what it was that she was supposed to tell him today. The group falls silent, reluctant to speak at first. Finally, the boy among them speaks up. He explains that during the Glory Festival, they learned that demons were being captured and traded in the capital's black market. Valier is shocked by this revelation, as the last time he had heard, all those involved in such activities had been killed after the war. Valier asks why the demon prisoners are being traded in the black market in the first place. One of them responds, explaining that it's curiosity driving the desire to collect them. Valier is furious, unable to believe what he's hearing. People are collecting demons like pets and separating orcs and goblins, focusing only on demons. They tell him that succubi, a type of demon, are the most traded race. The reason for collecting them, they explain, is because of their human-like form. What surprises Valier even more is that these demons, who are usually known to consume humans, especially their organs, are being targeted. Alaris adds that while it's true succubi eat humans, they can be brainwashed to stop that behavior. If that doesn't work, surgeries can be done on them, much like with incubi. Valier, still shocked, asks what their plan is now. Looking at the group, it seems they want to save the prisoners. They admit they do, but there's hesitation. If they try and fail, it could expose them all, including Valier. Valier sees that, despite the slim chance of success, they have made it their priority to save the demon prisoners. It's clear that they are waiting on him to lead them in rescuing their people from the life of slavery. But the truth is, Valier isn't even a true demon. He's just a middle-aged man now tasked with a mission to save prisoners, putting himself at risk. It feels like they are asking him to help rebuild the demon race to what it once was, like in the old days. Lost in thought, unsure of what to do or even what to say, Valier sits there, the weight of their expectations pressing on him. The group watches him expectantly, waiting for his response. Alaris, noticing his internal struggle, moves closer, apologizing for bringing it up so suddenly and for putting him on the spot. Valier, still overwhelmed, mutters that he can't believe he hasn't had a good night's sleep in a while. Before anyone can fully comprehend what he's saying, Valier stands up from the chair he was sitting in, his resolve forming. He tells them that since they are committed to saving their people, he will join them in their plan. The group is taken aback by his sudden decision, surprised by his willingness to take on such a dangerous mission. They are all deeply moved by Valier's willingness to take action immediately, despite the danger. Alaris is the first to speak, outlining what needs to be done for the mission to succeed. She explains that, in order to make any progress, they need to gather 3 pieces of critical information. First, the location where the demons are being kept. Second, how many demons are imprisoned. And third, the level of security surrounding their captors. The second male in the group, having been silent until now, steps forward to offer his insight. He acknowledges that it's incredibly difficult to gather reliable information about the black market, but fortunately, he has a few trusted contacts who can provide the details they need. These contacts are well connected to the nobility, which makes them the perfect source of information, since the black market's activities are largely controlled by the upper class. Valier, still processing all this new information, asks how they can learn about the individuals in charge of the black market. The male responds, revealing that the operation is actually a joint effort between the Imperial Army's guards and the nobles. They've built a secret prison specifically for the demons, a place well out of the public's view. Valier is stunned by this, asking if someone in the Imperial Army might be involved. The male admits that if a high-ranking officer is in charge of the operation, those beneath him might not have any idea about what's truly happening. Valier's mind races with the implications, and he asks whether the Imperial family might be in the dark as well. Alaris and the others exchange a brief glance before Alaris responds. She explains that while it's possible the Imperial family may be unaware, it's not unlikely that certain high-ranking officials within the Empire are either complicit or at least turning a blind eye to what's happening. The Empire is vast, and those in power often have their own hidden agendas, making it easy for such activities to go unnoticed, especially when powerful figures are involved. He tells the group firmly that their current plan won't work and that they need to come up with another strategy. He also wonders if there might be powerful mages involved in capturing the demons, mages with abilities that could prevent anyone from rescuing them. His frustration grows as he thinks about the anti-magic fields that could easily neutralize them, feeling more helpless with each passing moment. Alaris listens carefully to his concerns, then suggests a different approach. She warns that they should not attempt to rescue the prisoners when the black market opens for the auction. The security will be at its tightest then, with the demons being sold off to the highest bidder. Instead, she proposes that they strike earlier, before the auction takes place. She explains that the security will be weaker before the auction, which is when the demons are still being stored and unaccounted for. Once they're sold, the demons will belong to private owners, and escaping will be even more difficult, as the new owners will have full control over them. If they act before the auction, when the demons are still contained, they'll have a better chance of freeing them without facing overwhelming resistance. The group agrees to the plan, despite knowing how difficult and risky it will be. They understand that the best way to save the demons is to strike before the auction begins, when they are still in captivity. However, Valier knows that even though they want to save the demons, there's a significant risk involved. Once they begin rescuing prisoners, word will spread quickly, and it won't be long before the nobles tighten their grip on the security around the black market. The thought of the Empire getting involved in the matter troubles him further, as the consequences of any Imperial involvement could endanger the entire operation. He knows that if the Imperial family hears about it, there will be a massive uproar. This could lead to the end of their plan before it even begins. Sarkagar and Loyar, the other two demons involved in the plan, are also willing to proceed, even though they understand the risks. Despite Valier's reservations, the urgency of the situation is clear. He begins to think more deeply about how they can pull this off. As he contemplates their options, he realizes that it's unlikely they can move all the prisoners at once without drawing too much attention. But Alaris offers a potential solution. She suggests that she could teleport the demons out, although it will take her about half an hour to prepare the necessary spell. Valier listens closely, realizing that this could be their best chance to get the demons out undetected. Alaris tells him that she could teleport about 20 to 50 demons at a time, which gives them some flexibility. However, Valier knows that even with Alaris's magic, they can't save all the demons at once. So, he starts to think of ways to create a distraction, something that will make it easier for them to get the prisoners out without being caught. An idea forms in his mind, and he shares it with the group. They need to make the auction public. If they can get the people to know about the auction and expose the nobles who are behind it, it might make things more difficult for the black market traders and force the nobles to back off. Though Alaris warns that spreading such a rumor is illegal and could have severe consequences, Valier believes that it's a necessary risk. If the nobles are seen as being involved in the trafficking of demons, the public outcry could put pressure on them, possibly forcing them to shut down the auction, or at least loosen their security. The group is feeling the pressure as they continue to discuss their plan. Valier understands that spreading the rumor about the nobles being involved in the black market trade will cause huge problems. If the people find out, riots will break out and the nobles will lose their power. Alaris worries about what will happen if the Imperial army steps in to stop the riots. Valier reassures her that the army won't do much. He explains that the Holy Knights, who work for the Church, are too powerful for the Imperial army to fight. If the Empire tries to suppress the riots, it could anger the Holy House, which the Empire cannot afford. Valier believes the only way the Empire can fix the situation is to hand the prisoners over to the Holy Knights. The Holy House might ask for an apology from the Imperial family, but they won't act too quickly. Valier thinks this gives them a chance to act while the prisoners are moved. Alaris and the others listen carefully. They know that once the Holy Knights are involved, their plan will be more difficult, but they also realize it may be the only option to save the prisoners. Valier suggests that when the prisoners are moved, they can use magic to teleport them out of the area before anyone notices. The plan isn't perfect, and there are many risks, but it's the best they have. By involving the Holy Knights, they hope to save the prisoners without the immediate threat of death. Valier believes that if they time it right, they can get the demons out safely and avoid being caught. With the rumors already spreading, the group knows they need to move quickly. If they can get the Holy Knights involved and expose the truth about the black market, they may have a chance to free the prisoners and protect themselves from the consequences.